The journey of a Pokémon researcher. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Gap. The tornado outside the valley should not have dispersed yet, right? Xuanjian swallowed his saliva and asked GK. How can it be so fast? GK shook his head. Xuanjian nodded and said nothing more. He had experienced the power of the storm outside, and the terrifying Section 4 still frightened him when he thought about it now. Moreover, he was only at the edge of the storm, while the newcomer actually crossed the storm directly. In fact, he was definitely much stronger than him. Under the attention of everyone, the new Charizard carried his trainer and landed on the flat ground leisurely. A young man with fiery red hair and a stern face jumped off his back. Compared with the disheveled Xuanjian, the other party's hair was not even messed up. The difference in strength between the two sides was obvious. GK excused himself to Xuanjian and immediately walked over. Long time no see, King Du. Du nodded in response, and then asked directly, the Dragon Tomb hasn't been opened yet, right? Although Du was a little rude, GK was obviously used to his behavior and didn't mind, and replied, not yet. What about the tornado outside the valley? I've never encountered one before. GK explained, it was caused by a trainer who wanted to take shortcuts when passing the test. I hope it didn't cause you any trouble. How can this little trouble cause me any trouble? It's just that I've never encountered it before, and I'm a little curious. But breaking through the obstruction of such a storm is indeed more conscious than the previous tests. Why don't we change the test for entering the valley to this in the future? Du suggested. GK smiled bitterly and shook his head. This is impossible. After all, not every trainer has your strength. If the test is changed to this, probably few trainers can pass it. Du nodded, said no more, and walked away. It can be seen that he is very familiar with the Charizard Valley and should be a frequent visitor here. Just as Du became the focus of everyone's attention, his Charizard also became the focus of many Charizards in the valley. From the moment he landed, many female Charizards immediately surrounded him, looking completely flattering. However, Du's Charizard, like its owner, had an arrogant face and looked down on its own kind. The male Charizards did not surround him like the females, and even felt a little dissatisfied that it attracted the attention of the opposite sex, but no Charizard raised any objections, which only meant that they had tacitly accepted the status of Du's Charizard. Several foreign Charizards have not been subdued by Du's Charizard, but they have also noticed the gap between themselves and the other party. Although there is no obvious expression, they look at Du's Charizard with a sense of awe in their eyes. Only Xuanjian's Charizard was different. It had just made a grand appearance and attracted everyone's attention, but it was robbed of the limelight. This made it very angry. Moreover, it had fought many battles with the weak to defeat the strong during its journey with Xuanjian, so it was not so afraid of powerful opponents. So, the Charizard opened its mouth and blew a blazing flame towards Du's Charizard. This was almost a direct declaration of challenge among Charizards. Du's Charizard was completely dismissive of the provocations of these fellows, and just glanced at them sideways, with a strong contempt in his eyes. The temperature of the flame was not high enough to give it the temperature of the magma used for bathing during training. Sensing the contempt in the opponent's eyes, Xuanjian's Charizard was suddenly a little angry. Even after Xuanjian's careful training, the arrogant character of the Charizard had not changed much. With a middle finger raised, Xuanjian's Charizard made a provocative gesture to the opponent that was common to humans and elves. Seeing the opponent's actions, Du's Charizard narrowed his eyes and decided to teach the young Charizard a lesson, so that it would know the necessity of respecting elders. At this time, Du called out to his Charizard, and the Charizard immediately turned around and went to Du, but a trace of regret appeared on its face. Then it stretched out its little finger, drew a circle towards all the Charizards, and then pointed to the ground. The meaning of this action, if translated into human language, is probably this: trash. I'm not talking about you, but everyone. After the group ridicule, Du's Charizard turned around and left, not worrying about the consequences of his actions at all. His behavior showed the pride and dominance of the spirits like Charizard to the fullest. In fact, most of the Charizards present had been defeated by it. According to the tacit tradition of the Charizard tribe, the defeated Charizard must unconditionally obey the winner, unless it can fight a comeback and win again. This is the confidence of Deuce Charizard to dare to ridicule the group. Unless other Charizards can beat it, they can only endure its ridicule. Sure enough, the Charizards in the valley turned a blind eye to the ridicule of Deuce Charizard, without showing any emotion, and just left silently to train. Unfortunately, without the help of the trainer, the training effect of the Pokémon itself is not good, and how many trainers in the world can be stronger than Dew? Under such provocation, the foreign Charizards who were not defeated were naturally unwilling, and one by one they roared loudly at the back of Deuce Charizard, but such action seemed a bit funny to Xuanjian. Roaring at the back of others is useless, and no one is stopping you. Rushing up and having a good fight is enough to be a man. As for the issue of winning or losing, shouldn't this be considered later? And the opponent is just one person. Even if he can't beat him in a single fight, a group fight will always work. But Xuanjian soon lost interest in watching the show, because his own Charizard had decided to put Xuanjian's idea into practice. Xuanjian quickly stopped his Charizard and shook his head at it. In Charizard form, his Charizard will certainly lose to Dew's Charizard, but if he launches Mega Evolution, he will have a good chance of winning. However, Mega Evolution is the trump card he prepared for this expedition, and it is not suitable to be exposed so early. If he does not use the trump card and loses to the opponent, it will undoubtedly cause great harm to Charizard's body and mind, so it is the right choice to endure it for the time being. It's not the time yet, Charizard. We will be able to have a good fight with each other soon, just be patient. Xuanjian said to Charizard. After hearing Xuanjian's words, Charizard hesitated for a while, but finally suppressed his anger and obeyed Xuanjian's orders. The movement here attracted Dew's attention. Dew looked at Xuanjian and Charizard and nodded imperceptibly. The way Pokémon and trainers get along has always been a topic of intense discussion among everyone. Some people think that Pokémon should be the main focus, while others think that trainers should be the main focus. But no matter which faction people are from, they all recognize one thing: a trainer who can make Pokémon obey orders is a good trainer. Charizard is a proud, irritable and easily provoked by its opponent, and the stronger the Charizard, the more so. Therefore, as a Charizard trainer, whether or not you can calm down the angry Charizard is a very important criterion. The Charizard just now was obviously very angry, and even wanted to rush up regardless of the difference in strength, but it calmed down after the trainer's words. It seems that the two sides have a high degree of tacit understanding. It seems that we have met an interesting opponent this time. Charizard, how much strength do you think we should use? Dew asked the Charizard beside him. Chapter 252 Dragon Tomb opens. After Dew left, the valley calmed down again. After Xuanjian settled down under GK's arrangement, he immediately took Charizard into intensive training, striving to increase Charizard's strength before the Dragon Tomb was opened. Charizard Valley is worthy of being a holy place for Charizard's practice. The environment is very suitable for Charizard's practice. Coupled with a mutual exchange of a large number of powerful fellows, Charizard's strength has been greatly improved in just a few days. During Xuanjian and Charizard's practice, some trainers came with their own Charizards one after another, but these people passed the test in an orderly manner and did not show much strength, so Xuanjian did not find any guy who made people's eyes shine. However, from Xuanjian's perspective, these trainers who came were all elites or above. Considering that most of them used Charizard as their initial Pokémon, it was not surprising that there were several with some king-level strength. Although the feeling of rapid improvement in strength was intoxicating, after a few days of training, Xuanjian stopped Charizard's training and began to settle the recent gains. This is not only good for improving strength, but also because Xuanjian feels that the Dragon Tomb is about to open, and the fire-breathing dragon needs to take a good rest. After all, this is the purpose of this trip. The fire-breathing Dragon Valley is actually formed by a huge crater depression, and the magma pool that still remains in the center is proof of this. As the opening date of the Dragon Tomb approaches, uninterrupted earthquakes begin to occur, and the originally calm magma pool also boils like boiling water, which further increases the temperature in the valley. According to GK, the Dragon Tomb is actually in a half-plane, and the entrance to the half-plane is below the magma pool. When the magma pool boils to its peak, the Dragon Tomb will open. As everyone waits anxiously, the magma boils more and more violently, and even gushes up, forming a fountain-like landscape. A large amount of fire energy is released from it, forming a blazing flame that surrounds the magma fountain. In the blazing flame, the space begins to fluctuate, and a looming door begins to appear and slowly opens. Roar. Seeing the dragon tomb appear, some old fire-breathing dragons whose lives have come to an end soared into the air and rushed into it impatiently. Their lives have come to an end. In order to wait for this day, they have been struggling to survive. Now is the time for them to fly to their final destination. The flames at the entrance of the dragon tomb are very hot, and even the fire-breathing dragons cannot resist it. The moment they pass through the entrance, the blazing flames immediately ignite their bodies, and with the fire energy in their bodies, they are completely transformed into huge fireballs. However, the fire-breathing dragons do not seem to feel any pain at all, but instead emit bursts of high-pitched dragon roars, as if celebrating the new life. Accompanied by the high-pitched dragon roars, the old fire-breathing dragons passed through the gate of the dragon tomb and disappeared. After all the old fire-breathing dragons disappeared from sight, the scene fell into a strange silence, with only the gurgling sound of boiling magma. After a long silence, someone finally couldn't help but ask GK, "Miss GK, do we also have to go through the flaming gate like those old Charizards?" Of course, GK nodded, "Unless you can find another way here. Oh, by the way, I want to remind you all, don't dream of using the power of other Pokémon, especially Psychic-type Pokémon to get through this gate. Their powers are forbidden here. If you don't listen to the advice, we will not be responsible if something happens. But without the help of other Pokémon, it is almost an impossible task to pass through this gate. Even if Charizard can barely resist it, we trainers can't resist it." A trainer questioned. "Then why not just let Charizard in? Everyone, don't be lucky, do what you can. The flames won't disappear before the gate is closed, and the temperature won't drop. This may be the consequence of not doing what you can." GK took out a tree fruit and threw it at the gate. Under the high-temperature flames, the tree fruit was turned into a ball of charcoal before it got close to the gate, and finally turned into flames and burned out. Hiss! The onlookers all took a breath of cold air. With such a temperature, their flesh and blood bodies couldn't bear it at all. Fortunately, they didn't have to participate, and only let Charizard go. For a while, a large number of trainers changed their plans and let the Pokémon participate alone. For a while, the scene thawed again and returned to a chaotic state. However, in this messy scene, there are always some people who stand out, such as Do. He was seen riding on Charizard, urging Charizard to fly high into the sky, then adjusting the angle and performing the Dragon God Dive. Under the effect of gravity, the power of the Dragon God Dive was magnified several times, allowing the swooping Charizard and Do to gain unparalleled speed and even break the sound barrier. With their powerful speed, Do and Charizard split the air, forming a spindle-shaped protective layer around them. Because the air was split to form a protective layer, it took longer for the heat to be transferred to Do and Charizard. In this short period of time, Do and Charizard had already passed through the flame gate like a meteor with their terrifying speed and disappeared into the dragon tomb. Too amazing. It's Do indeed. The people present exclaimed, but no one imitated Do's approach, because this seemingly simple move condensed skills that ordinary people could not master. Apart from anything else, at such a high speed, accurately aiming at the gate to pass through instead of hitting other places was difficult for most people. "Okay, Charizard, let's go too." After watching Do Xiu, Xuanjian also felt his blood boiling. After saying hello to Duoji and Shota, he immediately jumped on the back of Charizard and flew into the air. Roar. Charizard also roared with fighting spirit, flapped his wings and flew off the ground, flying towards the flame gate. Someone else has gone. It seems to be a child. Oh, too reckless. This time there will be no trace of his body. The crowd of onlookers immediately focused their attention on Xuanjian and started to talk, making Xuanjian enjoy the feeling of being the center of attention, pretending to be cool. However, Xuanjian didn't care about these. As Charizard approached the flame gate, Xuanjian really felt the scorching temperature. It was not an illusion to test one's character, but a real flame. "Charizard, flame clothes," Xuanjian ordered, and then a layer of flames burned from Charizard's body, enveloping Xuanjian and Charizard. Xuanjian also closed his eyes, and through the connection established with Charizard, he manipulated the flame with all his heart and soul, turning it into a ball of red yarn, wrapping himself and Charizard. This was a skill that he and Charizard had recently developed based on the flames that ignited Charizard on the day of the test. It required the combined efforts of the two to fully activate it. The effect was to absorb and resist external fire energy, and cause fire damage to closed targets. In simple terms, it was the effect of the fire-inducing property plus the flame body property. The flames that enveloped Xuanjian and Charizard continued to absorb the heat from the surroundings, and the color gradually turned red like a gauze, and finally formed a series of flying red water chestnuts. These red water chestnut-like flames further protected Xuanjian and Charizard. Even though the temperature around them was getting higher and higher, Xuanjian and Charizard did not feel any discomfort. Moreover, it seemed that due to the mysterious connection between Xuanjian and Charizard, Xuanjian could actually absorb energy from the flames in a short period of time to maintain his own consumption, just like Charizard. Absorbing the energy from all around, the flaming red lotus grew longer and longer, causing bursts of exclamations from the onlookers. Although it was well protected, the mental energy consumed to maintain this skill was considerable. Xuanjian and Charizard did not dare to delay and quickly increased their speed, passed through the flaming gate, and disappeared from everyone's sight. Chapter 253 Exploring the Dragon Tomb. There were no huge corpses as imagined, no scattered treasures, and no raging flames. Xuanjian, who entered the Dragon Tomb, quickly passed through the space tunnel and came alone to a hall like a deserted temple. Except for a large number of incomprehensible murals on the walls around, there was nothing special. However, these murals were also very valuable to Xuanjian, and Xuanjian quickly took out a camera he carried with him to record them. Thanks to the newly developed skill flame clothes, Xuanjian's equipment was best protected and brought in intact, otherwise these murals would not be known to outsiders until some time. Although he could not interpret them, Xuanjian still believed that these murals were very valuable, and it was worth the trip just to take pictures of them. There is nothing around, what should I do next? Do you have any ideas, Charizard? After taking pictures of the murals, Xuanjian said with some distress. There were many doors around, but there were no prompts on the doors. Xuanjian did not know how to go for a while, so he could only ask Charizard's ideas. Charizard also shook his head, indicating that he also had no sense. Xuanjian sighed helplessly, then I can only choose one at random. Then he squatted down and made a mark on the ground, and then led Charizard to a door. This was the subspace, and the original means of identifying the direction could not be used, so they could only mark it with a mark. Led by Charizard, a man and an elf cautiously stepped into the passage, but surprisingly, there was no danger hidden in this passage. It was just an ordinary passage, and the skills of removing the mechanism that Xuanjian had learned were not used at all. At the end of the passage, Xuanjian and Charizard returned to the original hall from another entrance again. Back to the original place, it seems that these passages seem to be interconnected. Xuanjian looked at the mark he had just made on the ground and said, "Is there any special mechanism?" Xuanjian looked up and looked around, but did not find any clues. Roar, seeing Xuanjian was stumped, Charizard was also a little anxious, looking up and spewing a blazing flame at the mural. Xuanjian was about to speak up to stop this act of destroying the ancient monument, but found that when the flames fell on the murals, the patterns around the murals suddenly emitted a faint red light and moved around like a snake. "Don't stop, Charizard, keep using the jet flame," Xuanjian ordered immediately. Charizard nodded, and the flames that had weakened became stronger again and shot towards the murals, and the murals also accepted all the flames and absorbed them without leaving a trace. As the flames were absorbed, more and more patterns began to light up and move around. Seeing this, Charizard increased the jet of flames even more. 1 second, 2 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, time passed little by little, and more patterns lit up, but there were still many patterns that had not been lit up. The flames ejected by Charizard had gradually begun to decrease. After all, Charizard was not a spirit known for its endurance, and long-term persistence in using jet flames consumed it a lot. Charizard, work harder. It's almost done. Xuanjian encouraged loudly. The premonition in his heart told him that this was a very critical test, and the longer he persisted, the better. Roar, Charizard groaned, and the flame on its tail exploded completely, launching a fierce fire state. To maintain the output of the flame without weakening, Xuanjian once again connected his thoughts with Charizard, helping it to allocate the energy in its body and maximize the energy utilization rate. Finally, after Charizard squeezed out the last trace of fire energy in its body, the last pattern was finally lit. As the last pattern was lit, all the patterns began to converge towards the center of the zenith, and finally formed a strange pattern. The pattern slowly emerged from the mural, fell towards Charizard, and finally sank into Charizard's chest, leaving a fiery red tattoo on it. At the same time, a hole also appeared from where the pattern emerged, and gradually expanded to a size large enough for Charizard to pass through. This is, after Xuanjian made sure that the suddenly appearing pattern did not cause any discomfort to Charizard, he began to carefully observe the tattoo on Charizard's chest. This thing looks a bit like the command seal in Fate, and it is incomplete. Xuanjian couldn't help but wonder, is this the proof of passing the test? Can you collect a complete command seal after passing all the tests, and then get some treasure? Anyway, we finally have some clues, so let's continue searching and try to collect this thing. Xuanjian said to Charizard. Charizard nodded, carried Xuanjian, rushed into the hole that appeared on the ceiling, and headed for the next test. While Xuanjian was exploring the Dragon Tomb, a debate was unfolding on another distant continent called Kalos. In the conference room, a tall man with hair like a lion's mane was roaring loudly, "Since the discovery of Mega Evolution, we have been continuously introducing Pokémon from other regions, trying to find more Mega Evolutions. Over the years, in order to introduce these Pokémon, we have caused great ecological losses. If it weren't for Zygarde and Kalos suppressing ecological disasters, our ecosystem would have collapsed long ago. We have paid so much just to defeat the corrupt Kanto and become the strongest alliance. But now you tell me that this won't work and that we should give up this plan. How ridiculous." The conference room fell into a brief silence, and then a white-haired old man spoke. "Calm down, Vladily. Kanto is not as simple as you think. Even with Mega Evolution, we can't compete with it. Lying dormant is the right choice." Bang! The man called Vladily slammed the table heavily and said, "Are you kidding? How can you be stronger than us? You have also seen the improvement that Super Evolution brings to the elves. This earth-shaking change, you tell me that you are not as good as those conservative guys in Kanto? You are not too old and have lost all your ambition and fighting spirit. Kanto? If it weren't for the blood transfusion from the Orange Islands in Chengdu, this conservative region would have been revoked of its qualification to establish an alliance long ago. Too arrogant. How can you talk like that? So rude." Vladily's words angered everyone in the conference room. The old people who had been silent before became excited and denounced Vladily. People are like this. Demeanor and politeness can only be maintained when they are not poked in the sore spot. Once they are caught in the sore spot, these bigwigs who hold the power of the Kalos Alliance are not much different from ordinary people. "Quiet," said the old man who spoke first. As soon as he spoke, the others fell silent. Then, the old man said to Vladily, "What you said makes sense, but the interests involved are too great. We can't bet everything at once. Let's put it this way, after the regional league competition is over, there will be an exchange meeting between all regions. If you can lead the team to defeat Kanto, then I will support your idea." "Okay, that's decided. Just wait. I will prove that my point of view is correct." Chapter 254 The Second Level. Passing through the zenith, Xuanjian and Charizard entered a mysterious space. Here, a large number of red meteorites were suspended in the air like planets, moving at high speed around a crystal in the center that was emitting white light. As soon as they entered here, Xuanjian and Charizard were immediately prompted that they needed to destroy those red meteorites before they could enter the next level. "Is that so? Charizard, use jet flames on that red meteorite," Xuanjian ordered. Charizard nodded and immediately raised his head and sprayed a stream of flames, but unfortunately it had no effect. The flames were absorbed by the red meteorite as soon as they approached it. "Try Dragon's Fury," Xuanjian ordered again. Charizard executed the order again, but got the same result. Xuanjian stroked his chin and analyzed, "Then it seems that it should be immune to special attacks. It seems that only physical attacks can be used." Fortunately, in order to improve physical fitness, although his Charizard did not intend to train it into a physical attacker, he did not give up practicing physical attacks. "Then Charizard, let's go. Use Dragon Claws," Xuanjian ordered. Roar. Charizard immediately turned into a red figure and rushed towards the nearest meteorite. The blue light on its claws turned into long claws and chopped the meteorite heavily. Suddenly, the meteorite was immediately chopped into pieces. After the meteorite shattered, it immediately lost its ability to float and fell to the ground. After Xuanjian took a quick look, he found that no treasures had fallen, so he immediately ordered Charizard to rush to the next meteorite again. Although he was not very good at physical attacks, because he had not relaxed his practice, His basic physical attacks were not bad, so Charizard had no pressure in dealing with these meteorites. However, as the meteorites shattered piece by piece, Xuanjian found that the movement speed of the remaining red meteorites gradually increased, and this acceleration was determined by time and the number of meteorites destroyed by Charizard. Specifically, for every meteorite destroyed by Charizard, the speed of the remaining meteorites increased by 1 section, but even if Charizard did not destroy the meteorites, the speed of the meteorites would gradually increase as time passed, and Xuanjian also found that these meteorites actually began to avoid Charizard's attacks. The test is not that simple, Charizard, we have to speed up, Xuanjian said immediately. If the time is delayed too long, the two of them may not even be able to catch up with the meteorite, so how can they destroy it? Charizard nodded, took a deep breath, and rushed to the next meteorite. Soon, with the efforts of Xuanjian and Charizard, there was only one red meteorite left, but the speed of the meteorite was almost the same as Charizard. Charizard, can you still hold on? Xuanjian asked Charizard, who was panting under him. Fire-type elves have poor endurance, and they used physical attacks that they were not good at. The physical strength of Charizard, which had just recovered, once again approached the limit. Hoo 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 hoo. Charizard opened his mouth and wanted to answer with a roar that he could still do it, but it was forcibly replaced by a burst of violent panting. However, Charizard still nodded stubbornly, indicating that he could still do it. You are worthy of being my Charizard. Sorry, although I am very tired, I can only rely on you. Xuanjian patted Charizard's shoulder to encourage him, and then looked at the last meteorite, calculating its trajectory, and letting Charizard take a short rest. When the meteorite is not being chased, it moves along a certain trajectory. Xuanjian calculated its trajectory, ignoring the gradually increasing speed, looking for the opportunity for the final blow. Finally, when the meteorite moved to the front and upper part, Xuanjian issued an order to Charizard. Charizard, let's go, flash flame charge. The flames on Charizard's tail exploded, and it entered a fierce fire state. At the same time, balls of flames exploded all over its body, pushing it to accelerate and rush towards the meteorite. This physical attack skill is very effective when used for acceleration, and can increase Charizard's speed by nearly twice. Unfortunately, such acceleration cannot be compared with a speed-enhancing skill. It can only increase the straight-line sprint speed, which is not very helpful for reaction speed and other speed-related aspects. With the help of Flash Charge, Charizard gradually caught up with the meteorite. Charizard immediately used its Dragon Claws and chopped down at the meteorite. Unfortunately, this must-win attack failed. When Charizard rushed towards the meteorite immediately sensed something. It was no longer the aimless and irregular movement as before, but fled directly in the direction away from Charizard, and its speed increased again. When Charizard approached it, its speed was once again close to that of Charizard using Flash Charge. When Charizard's claws chopped down, the meteorite tilted slightly, and the Dragon Claws failed to hit the meteorite completely, so that it failed to completely destroy it, but instead let it use the force to distance itself from Charizard again. Damn it! Xuanjian couldn't help but curse. As the Dragon Claws missed, the distance between the two was once again pulled apart. The speed of the meteorite was getting faster and faster, but Charizard's Flash Charge was almost over, and the test was in a dilemma. This is the only way. Charizard, keep your eyes on the meteorite and move towards it with all your strength. Get your Dragon Claws ready. Xuanjian ordered again. Although he didn't know how Xuanjian would solve the current dilemma, the tacit understanding cultivated over a long period of time made Charizard execute Xuanjian's orders without hesitation. After issuing the order, Xuanjian no longer cared about anything else, but just stared at the meteorite tightly and estimated the distance between the two sides. Although the distance between the two sides gradually shortened, the speed of the meteorite was getting faster and faster. When Charizard approached the meteorite again, the speed of the two was exactly the same. Even the meteorite was gradually surpassing Charizard, and the distance was widened again. 3, 2, 1, Dragon Claw attack. Xuanjian ordered, and at the same time, his body jumped off the back of Charizard and jumped backwards. This was a countermeasure that Xuanjian came up with based on the principle of momentum in physics. When he left the back of Charizard and moved backwards, the momentum of himself and Charizard would change. These changes in momentum and the reduction in weight would increase the speed of Charizard again. Sure enough, After Xuanjian left Charizard, Charizard's speed increased significantly. With the increase in speed, Charizard caught up with a meteorite, and the dragon claws that had been prepared for a long time slashed the meteorite fiercely. Boom! The meteorite exploded after being hit by the dragon claws. Charizard didn't care about the scattered debris that scratched his skin, and used the swallow return to return from the air and catch the falling Xuanjian. Well done, Charizard. Xuanjian said happily. The situation just now was really a dangerous situation. If he made such a dangerous move, it would easily make Charizard lose his mind and fail to launch an attack successfully. Fortunately, the tacit understanding and trust cultivated for a long time allowed Charizard to maintain a perfect state and successfully smash the meteorite. Charizard grinned and sent a sentence through his spirit, "I have always believed that Xuanjian can do anything." As the last meteorite shattered, the white crystal in the center burst into dazzling white light. In the white light, another command seal appeared and sank into Charizard's body. Charizard immediately felt that his physical strength had fully recovered to its peak, and even broke through. Randomly, a white light flashed, and Charizard and Xuanjian felt a flash before their eyes, and then appeared in a new space. I saw many book friends leave messages asking why the update has not been resumed in August. I am really sorry about this. My father and grandmother are both sick and hospitalized. I have been very busy during this period. I really can't guarantee the update. Please understand. I still can't view the rewards, so I can only thank the book friends who support me. Chapter 255, Meeting Do Again. When the light faded and Charizard and Xuanjian regained their vision, Xuanjian found himself and Charizard in a beautiful forest again. The forest was filled with birdsong and flowers, and was full of tranquility, which made the two people who were originally nervous relax unconsciously. Is the test over? Xuanjian thought secretly. Although the tattoo on Charizard looked similar to the command seal, it was just a resemblance in appearance. It did not have to have 3 strokes like the command seal, corresponding to the 3 levels of the test. Let's look around and see if there is anything to find before we draw a conclusion. Charizard, have you recovered your physical strength? Xuanjian asked Charizard. I don't know what kind of power is at work. Although Charizard will consume all its physical strength every time it passes the test, it will always quickly recover to its best condition after the test. Of course, the buffs are also eliminated. Charizard nodded, indicating that he had recovered. In the last test, it realized that random roars and flames were a waste of energy. Although this little bit of energy was very insignificant, it could be the last straw that determines success or failure at a critical moment. Therefore, Charizard has begun to learn not to do those useless consumption. Xuanjian also discovered Charizard's progress and was very pleased with its growth. This experience and habit gained through training is also a kind of strength, even more important than the level. Patting Charizard, Xuanjian said, "Let's go." Charizard carried Xuanjian up into the sky and patrolled over the forest. Being in the sky, the field of vision was greatly broadened. Xuanjian soon discovered that the forest he was in was not big, probably only the size of Kayamo village, and there were lakes, mountains and other landscapes in the distance. It seemed that this was a complete world, not a monotonous test place like before. However, Xuanjian soon discovered the strangeness of it. There were no elves here. Although all the information from the previous life and the education received in this life all emphasize that humans are the highest creatures in this world, from Xuanjian's point of view, the real protagonists of this world are actually elves. After all, the power of creation and destruction is in the hands of elves. It's just that because there are too many types of elves, their protagonist status is not obvious. Even in the previous life, this work was called Elf XXXX, not the Adventures of Xiaozi or something. Back to the topic, what Xuanjian found wrong is that there are no elves here. You know, if you ignore the difference in species, the footprints of elves are all over the world. There are grass, insect, and flying types in the forest, water types in the ocean, ground types and rock types in the desert. In short, there are elves in almost any environment, but this seemingly vibrant world lacks this necessary factor. However, even after discovering this, Xuanjian did not find a breakthrough. After a little thought, Xuanjian ordered, "Go to the other side of the mountain and have a look." Regardless of ancient and modern times, at home and abroad, mountains, which are far away from the mundane world, quiet and spacious, and full of style, are the first choice for various masters or bosses to live. In the absence of other clues, Xuanjian decided to go there first. Following Xuanjian's order, Charizard immediately turned to the distant mountains. Under the full speed of Charizard, the two soon came to the vicinity of the mountain. As soon as they approached, Xuanjian immediately made a discovery. "That's Charizard, let's go over there." Xuanjian looked at the red figure standing on the top of a huge rock with his hands folded on his chest and a Charizard, and immediately called to the Charizard. The Charizard nodded and immediately flew over quickly. As for Dew's Charizard, it had long wanted to fight with the other party, but it had never had the chance. Now that this guy appeared here, it was a godsend for him. With a deliberate provocation, the fire-breathing dragon landed heavily in front of Dew, and the flapping of its wings stirred up a cloud of dust, which fell all over Dew and his fire-breathing dragon. The provocation of the fire-breathing dragon immediately worked. Dew's fire-breathing dragon immediately looked over, and a cold light flashed in his eyes, but he did not make any more movements, but stood quietly behind Dew waiting for orders. Xuanjian understood the little thoughts of the fire-breathing dragon, but he did not stop it. After all, this race is born with a bad temper. If it is suppressed too much, there must be some channels for it to vent. Otherwise, if it is suppressed too much, the fire-breathing dragon will lose its courage to fight. And venting to outsiders is always better than venting to one's own people. "I'm sorry, King Dew, the fire-breathing dragon didn't control it well when it landed, and it offended you." Xuanjian apologized without any sincerity. Speaking of Dew, a guy with a dead face, he always has an urge to tease him. Although it was his fault, he really couldn't feel sorry. Dew didn't know whether he noticed Xuanjian's duplicity or didn't care. After shaking off the dust on his clothes, he said to Xuanjian, "You are finally here. I have been waiting for you for a long time." "What the hell?" After hearing what Dew said, Xuanjian was stunned. "Did I go to the wrong set?" Generally, shouldn't the NPC who is on the verge of death or has no choice say this when issuing tasks to the protagonist? Could this Dew be fake? "What do you mean? I don't quite understand. Can you explain it more clearly?" Dew glanced at Xuanjian and was a little discouraged. How could these guys be so stupid? They couldn't even understand such an obvious meaning. What about the tacit understanding between trainers? It's so disappointing. Helplessly, Dew had to patiently explain, "When we were in the fire-breathing Dragon Valley, I noticed you. Among all the challengers, only your strength was barely acceptable. You really didn't let me down. You successfully passed the first 2 tests and came here. In this way, I can pass this level." "Oh, can you explain it in more detail?" Xuanjian asked. Dew's words contained too much information, and he really couldn't understand it for a while. Although he was a little dissatisfied, Dew still met Xuanjian's request and continued to explain. "This is the last level to obtain the real treasure of the Dragon Tomb, and the requirement for this level is to defeat another competitor, otherwise you can't pass it. In other words, if no one else passes the first 2 levels, this level cannot be passed." Dew nodded. "But what about the real treasure?" Xuanjian asked again curiously. Is there any shocking secret in it that he doesn't know? This time, Dew did not meet Xuanjian's request, but said impatiently, "Stop talking nonsense, come and fight. You will know everything after the fight." "Okay, although I don't know what the real treasure is, but just for the name, I won't give it a try." Charizard, Mega Evolution. Chapter 256, Confrontation with Dew. Dazzling light emanated from the Keystone and the Mega Evolution Stone, connecting together. In the surprised eyes of Dew, Charizard's body underwent drastic changes and evolved into the more powerful Mega Charizard Y. At the moment Mega Charizard appeared, the sun in the sky suddenly became dazzling. This was the effect of its sunshine characteristics. However, since it was a fire-type civil war, the sunny day effect amplified both sides at the same time, and the effect was not great. Is this the legendary Mega Evolution? I didn't expect to see it here. Dew looked at Mega Charizard Y with great interest. Xuanjian nodded and tried to say in a calm tone, "Yes, my Charizard has been cultivated for too short a time and is not enough to fight against your Charizard. But with the power of Mega Evolution, I believe I am still qualified to fight you." Dew is absolutely famous in Kanto. This person is not only the king of Kanto but also the king of Johto. According to the information provided by Team Rocket, this person is currently challenging the championship again. If the history known by Xuanjian has not changed too much, this person finally succeeded. Being able to fight with a current king and future champion, and with a chance of winning, Xuanjian felt his blood boiling just thinking about it. Compared to Xuanjian's excitement, Du was still so calm, but seeing such an interesting opponent, he also had a magical desire to fight. Okay, let me see it. Charizard, use Jet Flame. Mega Charizard Y, Dragon's Fury. The two attacks, one red and one blue, collided with each other, producing a violent explosion. The power of Dragon's Fury was slightly inferior to Jet Flame, but Mega Charizard Y's special attack was much higher than the opponent, so this confrontation ended with Dragon's Fury slightly winning. Interesting, Charizard, use Dragon Claw. Du ordered. With his experience, he immediately discovered the strengths of Mega Charizard Y, and naturally would not choose to foolishly fight the opponent head-on, but used physical attacks instead. Xuanjian also responded immediately, Mega Charizard Y, Fly Up. Although the basic physical attacks of both sides are the same, and even Mega Charizard Y, whose body has been strengthened to a certain extent after Mega Evolution, is stronger, the opponent's level and hard power are higher than his own, and close combat is not in his own interests. Mega Charizard Y immediately soared into the sky and avoided the opponent's dragon claws that flashed with cold light. After Super Evolution, its body became more slender and more suitable for flying. For a special attacker, this is the perfect match. Keep chasing. Looking at the opponent who took off into the air, Du ordered his Charizard. Xuanjian showed a triumphant smile at the corner of his mouth and said, I was afraid that you wouldn't come. Mega Charizard Y, use Flame Vortex. In air combat, the first party often has the first-hand advantage. Mega Charizard Y took off first, so naturally it had this advantage. It turned around suddenly and sprayed a large ball of vortex-shaped flames at the opponent chasing below. As a fire skill, the Flame Vortex did not do much damage to Charizard, but its binding ability was not weakened at all. The Charizard, which had just taken off, was immediately drawn into the powerful Flame Vortex and could not move. Seeing that Charizard was at a disadvantage, Du was not moved at all and said coldly, a trifle. Charizard, tear it apart. Squeak. 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 Like a sharp blade piercing through cloth, Charizard used its dragon claws again at the same time as Du's order was issued. Blue light lit up from Charizard's claws, turning into slender and sharp claws, instantly piercing the vortex formed by the flames. Then, Charizard struggled hard, and the flame vortex that bound it was immediately torn apart, dispersing into energy and dissipating in the air. Although he knew that his opponent would not be trapped so easily, Xuanjian was still a little surprised that his opponent escaped so easily. However, Mega Charizard Y was ready, so Xuanjian quickly issued another order, Mega Charizard Y, Dragon Wave Attack. Because he expected that his opponent would not be bound by the vortex of fire, Mega Charizard Y had already accumulated power for this move. After hearing Xuanjian's order, he immediately attacked his opponent, and the dazzling blue energy immediately submerged the Charizard that had just broken free. Although the attack successfully hit the opponent, Xuanjian's face did not relax at all, because he knew that this attack did not cause much damage to the opponent. The moment before the Dragon Wave hit Charizard, Charizard actually launched the Dragon Claw again and intercepted the Dragon Wave attack. The power of the dragon is indeed well deserved. Xuanjian praised. Although Charizard is called a dragon, it is actually just a sub-dragon and does not have the true dragon attributes. Therefore, although it can learn many dragon skills, it is far less handy to use than fire skills, not to mention that it uses the physical attack type Dragon Claws that it is not good at. But the Charizard that do just used the Dragon Claws many times in a row, and the power is extraordinary. This is not simply a high level and strong strength. The only explanation is that you use the power of the dragon to assist. However, this time, Xuanjian guessed wrong, and only heard Du explain, no, I haven't used the power of the dragon yet. It's just one of the results of long-term use of the power of the dragon to train Charizard. Your strength is very good, and you are qualified to see my power of the dragon. As soon as the voice fell, Xuanjian saw blue flames rising from Du's Charizard, and the original orange-red skin turned blue and white. If it weren't for the fact that its form did not change, Xuanjian would have thought that the other party had launched a Mega Evolution and evolved into another form of Mega Charizard X. Blue gives people a cold feeling, and blue flames are no exception. The blue Charizard has a kind of weird beauty and a different kind of deterrence. Xuanjian did not dare to be careless, and quickly issued an order, Mega Charizard Y, Flame Vortex. Although this skill cannot trap the opponent, it can delay time and test the opponent's degree of improvement. How can I let you hit it again? Du said, and saw the blue Charizard flap its wings, and its huge body slid to the side nimbly, easily avoiding the attack of the Flame Vortex. The attack missed, and Xuanjian was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that although the effect of the power of the dragon looked like X-type Mega Evolution, it was actually two different things, and the effects were also different. At least X-type Mega Evolution could not produce such a big increase in the speed of Charizard. Du ignored Xuanjian's thoughts and immediately ordered, "Now it's my turn to fight back, Charizard, Shadow Clone, and prepare for close-range attacks." Shadow Clone is a skill Xuanjian is very familiar with. It was with it that Xuanjian survived the novice period when he just debuted. However, as his strength gradually improved, Xuanjian rarely used it anymore. After all, this skill was too easy to be discovered. But today, Du taught Xuanjian a good lesson. Looking at the shadows flying in the sky, Xuanjian frowned. "Damn, the speed is too fast. There is no time to distinguish which one is the real one. The speed of light propagation is the fastest, and everything else has to stand aside. This is why vision is the first perception of most life. However, light cannot distinguish which one is the real one from the visual point of view, and whether it is perception or other methods, it cannot keep up with the opponent's speed, and it is very likely that the opponent will take this opportunity to attack. There is no other way. We can only wait for the opponent to attack and then counterattack." Xuanjian thought, and then he passed the order to Charizard to prepare for counterattack, and then he closed his eyes, covering the surroundings of Mega Charizard Y with his perception, waiting for the opponent to fall into the trap. Seeing Xuanjian's actions, under the information asymmetry, Du didn't know that Xuanjian had another trick up his sleeve, and just thought that the opponent was helpless. This situation has often been encountered before. Excited, Du said, "It seems that you are already waiting to die. Then do as you wish. Charizard, Dragon God Dive." Suddenly, the Charizards that were originally wandering around in the sky changed their directions and rushed towards Mega Charizard Y from all directions. Although it knew that only one of them was the real body and the others were phantoms, Mega Charizard Y was still taken by the opponent's momentum and was a little flustered for a while. But fortunately, it was not fighting alone. The comfort from the self-conscious end made it feel more at ease and soon calmed down. "Don't panic, Mega Charizard Y, get ready." Xuanjian ordered Mega Charizard in his mind. His perception couldn't keep up with the opponent's speed, and he was helpless against the opponent, but it was another matter if the opponent entered the perception range by himself. Mobilizing his perception, Xuanjian formed a spherical perception layer around Mega Charizard Y. When all the Charizards came in, he could identify them, find out where their true bodies were, and then pass them to Charizard through his consciousness. In this way, the reaction time could be greatly shortened, and the opponent could react before the attack. One by one, the Charizards passed through the perception layer and pounced on Charizard, and then broke and dissipated because of being touched. After touching the Phantom many times, Charizard got used to it and became a little numb. He no longer fought back and let the Phantom hit him. The Phantom seemed endless, but the true body that Xuanjian was waiting for never appeared. Although he didn't know Xuanjian's means, Du's rich combat experience made him not choose to attack immediately, but constantly send a large number of shadow clones to test. Maintaining such a wide range of perception consumes a lot of energy, but Xuanjian dared not relax at all, and could only hold on, allowing the seemingly endless shadow clones to pass through the perception layer, rushing towards Mega Charizard Y, and then dissipating one by one. Finally, it seemed that Du could no longer bear it, and a Charizard with a breath of life passed through the perception layer and quickly rushed towards Charizard. Xuanjian did not hesitate and immediately ordered through his consciousness, "Mega Charizard Y, use Destruction Death Ray." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 Awakening. The mind link greatly accelerated the transmission speed of the command. The moment Xuanjian issued the command, Mega Charizard Y immediately twisted its slender neck and turned to the direction of the opponent's attack. Facing the opponent, a beam of dazzling golden light shot out from its mouth. Although Mega Charizard Y's reaction and speed were already very fast, This long-planned attack mostly missed. The moment Charizard was hit by the Destruction Death Ray, it immediately used the Swallow Return skill and forcibly changed the direction of flight, so that the powerful Destruction Death Ray only hit its back, leaving a scar. Dragon God Dive is a powerful move. For most elves, it takes all their strength to use such a move. Xuanjian never expected that the opponent could follow up with Swallow Return after using Dragon God Dive and successfully avoid the attack of the Destruction Death Light. For a moment, Xuanjian was a little flustered, his mind was blank, and he could only remind Mega Charizard why, be careful. Unfortunately, this reminder did not produce any effect, but instead aggravated Mega Charizard Y's panic and confusion. Taking this opportunity, Charizard used the high speed generated by the superposition of two skills to flexibly hit Mega Charizard Y from behind, knocking it out of the air and smashing it on the mountain wall, stirring up a huge cloud of dust. After a successful attack, did not pursue the victory, or he disdained to do so. Looking at Xuanjian, who looked worried, said, "It seems that you have touched the secret of the king, but you don't seem to be used to the king-level fighting style." After a pause, continued, "The king-level trainers can connect with the spirits in their minds, so they are faster and more accurate in transmitting commands. But at the same time, it is equivalent to completely opening their hearts to the spirits, and the spirits are affected by the trainers far more than before. The trainer's distracting thoughts and mood swings will also be sensed by the spirits. If the trainer cannot control his distracting thoughts, mood and attention, he will be like what happened just now." Xuanjian was silent. Indeed, if he had not been too flustered just now, Mega Charizard Y could have continued to chase by adjusting the direction of the Destruction Ray, or use defense to minimize the damage, but because of his panic, Mega Charizard Y had no power to resist and took all the attacks of the opponent. The smoke and dust on the mountain wall gradually dissipated, revealing Mega Charizard Y that fell there. Although it was severely injured, Mega Charizard Y stubbornly persisted, did not lose its combat effectiveness, and did not release the Mega form. "Good willpower," said with a hint of regret. "A hardy battle is always so short. Charizard, decide the outcome once and for all." Following Du's order, Charizard flew high, used Dragon God Dive again, pulled out more blue flame tail in the air, and rushed towards Mega Charizard Y. "We haven't lost yet," Xuanjian shouted loudly. "Mega Charizard Y, burn up." Hearing Xuanjian shout, Mega Charizard Y tried to raise its slender neck and began to accumulate power. Xuanjian also raised his arm at the same time, and a beam of light shot out from the red crystal inlaid on the bracelet and injected it into Mega Charizard Y's body. Mega Charizard Y immediately injected all of it into its mouth, and suddenly, a dazzling red flame appeared in its mouth and slowly formed. In reality, the number of props carried by elves is naturally not limited by the numbers in the game, but this does not mean that elves can improve their strength by stacking props. Because most props cannot be activated at the same time as other props, they will affect each other. But after research, Xuanjian found that through some techniques, this effect can be avoided and the props can be used smoothly, such as Mega Evolution Stone and Z Crystal. Xuanjian found that by activating the Mega Evolution Stone first and allowing Charizard to evolve into Mega Charizard Y, the Mega Evolution Stone will be integrated with it and no longer exist alone. In this way, its influence is avoided and the Z Crystal can be reactivated. Gathering the strongest power, the air immediately became hot as soon as the red flame bomb was formed. Du also felt its great power, but Du did not choose to retreat, but urged Charizard to speed up again, wanting to decide the outcome by head-on collision. Under Du's urging, Charizard launched multiple skills such as Dragon Dance, Flying, Flash Charge, etc., raising the speed and attack to the limit. Under the high speed, the air was completely split, making a harsh sound, but this did not affect Xuanjian and Mega Charizard Y. Having learned from the last lesson, Xuanjian was extremely focused, and all his attention was connected to Mega Charizard Y, focusing on this attack. Z-move, Super Extreme Flame Bomb. Following Xuanjian's command, the flame in Mega Charizard Y's mouth turned into dazzling red light and fired out. Based on Mega Charizard Y's extremely high special attack, it brought together the fire-type ultimate move Burning Out in the Force of Nature, and was amplified by Sunny Day. The power of this move was close to the limit. At the moment the attack was launched, the surrounding space became unstable, as if it was about to be burned through. The red light hit the Charizard that was rushing down, and it collided strongly with a dense dragon-type energy around Charizard, and a huge explosion occurred immediately. The shock wave generated by the explosion swept across the surroundings. Under the shock wave, the space actually fluctuated faintly, and fine cracks appeared. The skill is too powerful, and the space can't bear it, Du said with a serious face. As soon as Du finished speaking, the crack in the space expanded further, tearing the entire space into pieces. The two people and their pets were caught in it before they could react. Xuanjian screamed and opened his eyes suddenly, only to find that he and Charizard were floating in a translucent eggshell. There were many similar eggshells in the surrounding space, and Charizards were also sleeping in them. Xuanjian was about to say something, but suddenly felt his eyelids droop, and he fell asleep again involuntarily. After Xuanjian fell asleep, a mysterious energy gathered from all around, passed through the eggshell, entered the eggshell, and sank into the bodies of Charizard and Xuanjian. When Xuanjian woke up again, he found that he had returned to the Charizard Valley, lying on his bed, and Charizard was lying beside him, sleeping soundly. Just when Xuanjian was wondering if everything before was a dream, a message in his mind gave him the answer. It turned out that after entering the Dragon Curtain, all people and Charizards fell into deep sleep, their bodies were placed in eggshells, and their spirits entered the dream to be tested. The body in the eggshell will be nourished by the energy in the Dragon Tomb, and the foundation will be consolidated. At the same time, according to the test passed in the dream, certain rewards can be obtained, and the highest level reward is Reshiram's skill Blue Flame. The purpose of Du's trip is exactly this skill. The strength of the dream when it is activated is determined by the strength of the Charizard participating in the experience. When Reshiram left the inheritance, he did not take into account the increase of Z crystals and Mega Evolution. Therefore, after Xuanjian's Charizard's strength increased significantly and fought fiercely with Du's Charizard, the energy fluctuation exceeded the strength of the dream, and finally caused the dream to be broken. After the dream was broken, the test naturally could not continue, but fortunately, Xuanjian and Du's strength was recognized, and both of them finally got the inheritance of Blue Flame. At the same time, Charizard's body was strengthened and its strength was further improved. After figuring out what was going on, Xuanjian breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this trip was not in vain. Not only did he greatly improve Charizard's physical fitness, which was a shortcoming, but he also got a Blue Flame skill. At this time, the door of the room opened, and Duoga walked in. Seeing Xuanjian, he immediately said in surprise, "Xuanjian, you're awake. That's great. Well, Duoga, how many days have I slept?" "Only half a day. You all fell asleep when you came out of the Dragon Tomb." Miss GK said it's okay, it's normal. Xuanjian nodded and asked, "Is King Dushan awake?" "Yes, but he's gone." Listening to his conversation with Miss GK, I found that he was in a good mood and had gotten what he wanted. After a pause, Duoga said, "By the way, he told me to tell you that we have to have a good fight next time we meet." "Yes, I will." Xuanjian nodded and said, "I really don't have a lot of words, but I haven't thought of a name for Charizard yet." Chapter 258 Kikayo City. The purpose of this trip has been achieved. Xuanjian and his party left the Charizard Valley, but before leaving, Xuanjian temporarily left the Charizard here. The environment here is very suitable for its growth and is very helpful for its strength improvement. After leaving the Charizard Valley, after a few days of trekking, the three of them came to a new city, Kikayo City. Should we go to the Pokémon Center to rest and exchange Pokémons, or go directly to challenge the Kikayo Gym? Duoga asked Xuanjian. It was still early, and it was in time to challenge the Kikayo Gym directly. However, Xuanjian only had a flying Pokémon, the Crosspit, in his hand. According to Xuanjian's habit, he would definitely choose to fight with the same attribute, so the Pokémon in his hand would not be enough. Xuanjian pondered for a moment and said, "No, I have the Crosspit and the Giant Claw Mantis in my hand, which should be enough." As the first echelon, the strength of the Crosspit and the Giant Claw Mantis is very close to the level of the King. Xuanjian wants to try to let it break through the King by giving it some pressure. If it succeeds, with this east wind, he should be able to completely enter the King level. With a decision made, the group soon arrived at the Kikayo Gym. The Kikayo Gym is shaped like a huge tower, and the competition venue is located on the open-air platform at the top of the tower, which is very suitable for flying-type Pokémon to exert their full strength. When Xuanjian and his group arrived, The gym owner Asu was free. After hearing that Xuanjian wanted to challenge, Asu immediately agreed. The rules of the competition are 2 versus 2, no problem. Except for my requirement to use flying-type Pokémon, the other rules are the same as those of ordinary gyms, no problem. Asu asked. Xuanjian, no problem. Okay, then this is my first Pokémon. Asu threw the Pokéball, go, Toucan. It's a very well-cultivated toucan. Duoga looked at the Pokémon summoned by Asu and praised. Toucan is an omnivorous Pokémon, but prefers to eat meat. In order to cater to its preferences, some trainers will ignore letting it consume plant-based food, which will cause nutritional imbalance, making it irritable and bloated. Asu's toucan is strong but not bloated, and his eyes are intimidating but not frantic. He undoubtedly has a good sense of proportion. Xuanjian nodded, very satisfied with his opponent, and took out the Pokéball, go, Mantis. Seeing Xuanjian summon Mantis, Asu said, although Mantis is not restrained by Toucan in terms of attributes, you will be at a disadvantage in such an open field. Xuanjian smiled and said, that's not necessarily true. Then according to the rules, I will attack first. Mantis, Flash. Toucan, let's use Flash too. Under the command of the trainer, the two Pokémon launched an attack at the same time and rushed towards the opponent. The giant claws and long beak collided with each other, making a harsh sound. Although Toucan's strength is extremely outstanding among flying Pokémon, it is still a gap compared to Mantis. In addition, it is suppressed in level and skills. In the head-on collision, Toucan suffered a big loss and was knocked back. Seeing that Toucan suffered a loss, Asu opened his mouth and ordered, Toucans, fly out of the rooftop. The open sky around is the best stage for flying Pokémon. As long as they return to the sky, it will be difficult for the flying Mantis to attack Toucans, and their side can deal with it calmly and wait for an opportunity to sneak attack. Hearing Asu's order, Toucans immediately used the force of the recoil to withdraw from the rooftop. Mantis's pursuit was a step slower, and it only hid a residual image. Xuanjian immediately ordered, Mantis, cannon beam. After receiving the order, Mantis's body surface immediately appeared with shining light, concentrated on the pincers, and then shot at Toucans in the air. Asu hurriedly ordered, Toucans, move at high speed. The vast sky made the flying ability get the most perfect use. The Toucans moving at high speed greatly increased their speed, easily avoiding the attack of Mantis's cannon beam, and successfully escaped from Mantis's attack radius. Asu was not careless because of this. He remained calm and ordered, Toucans, use key condensation. Although he could not attack the opponent for the time being, Xuanjian did not slack off and ordered Mantis to improve himself. Mantis, use Iron Wall. The degree of improvement of the enhanced skill for oneself is determined by the attribute of the self. The same skill for Toucans and Mantis will undoubtedly improve Mantis more. Asu did not dare to compete with Xuanjian and launched an attack immediately. Toucans, use Destruction Death Ray. Mantis, use Light Wall. Golden light spurted out of Toucan's mouth and shot directly at Mantis. With the advantage of air to ground and the key condensation to enhance the hit, this attack basically had no chance of missing. Mantis quickly raised its pincers and formed a shining light wall in front of it. After the Destruction Death Ray shot onto the light wall, it immediately sparked a series of fierce sparks. Even with the weakening of the light wall, Mantis was still hurt. Although the Toucan immediately fell into a state of stiffness after using the Destruction Light, relying on the previous inertia and momentum, the Toucan still moved quickly in the sky, making it impossible for the giant claws Mantis to attack it. Perhaps due to special training, the Toucan quickly recovered and started a new round of Destruction Light attacks. Although the light wall can effectively weaken the damage caused by the Destruction Light, the injuries of the giant claws Mantis still accumulated little by little. Despite this, both Xuanjian and the giant claws Mantis remained calm and waited calmly for the opportunity to counterattack. Finally, after the Toucan launched another Destruction Light attack, Xuanjian ordered, Giant Claws Mantis, Flash of Lightning. Flash of Lightning. Asa repeated in confusion. At this time, the distance between the Giant Claws Mantis and the Toucan was very far, and the Giant Claws Mantis did not have the ability to fly. How could a close-range skill like Flash of Lightning attack the Toucan flying in the sky? But things went beyond Asa's expectation. He saw the giant mantis rushing forward, flapping its wings and leaping out from the rooftop, flying up with a rising air current. The direction it was heading just happened to intersect with a toucan in a state of stiffness. Toucan, be careful. Asu shouted hurriedly, but it was too late. The figure of the giant mantis had already appeared below the toucan. Well done, giant mantis, one hit to finish the opponent. Xuanjian ordered. The giant mantis nodded, and punched out with both fists like bullets, landing on the toucan. With the toucan's defense, the giant mantis only used the most common bullet punch to make it lose its combat effectiveness, falling from the air, and was caught by the giant mantis with grace. Thank you, Asu took back toucan and thanked him, then threw out another Pokeball. Please, Pidgeot. A handsome bird appeared on the field. Learning from toucan's lesson, Asu immediately let Pidgeot leave the rooftop and fly high into the sky to avoid a head-on confrontation with the mantis. However, this time, Xuanjian did not let Mantis choose to passively counterattack, but chose to attack head-on. Mantis, chase after it and use Whirlwind Blade to attack. Chapter 259 Wing Badge. What? Hearing Xuanjian's order, Shota, who was watching, was a little bit unbelievable. Although the giant claw mantis could take advantage of the wind to glide for a short time and defeat the toucans, it was now facing Pidgeot, whose flying ability and various attributes were more outstanding. In Asu's opinion, leaving the rooftop and engaging in an air battle with Pidgeot was too irrational. Seeing Shota's surprise, Xuanjian explained, compared with the toucans, Pidgeot not only has a higher racial value, but also has many more skills that can be learned. In the situation just now, Pidgeot can use the raging wind without side effects to attack, leaving the giant claw mantis completely without any chance to exploit loopholes. If it continues like this, even if it is not dizzy by the raging wind, it will be worn out little by little. Therefore, a head-on confrontation is the way to win with the highest chance. Having said that, the advantages and disadvantages of both sides in the air are still very obvious. Even if Xuanjian's giant claw mantis can glide in the air because of the characteristics of light metal, it is completely unable to compete with the king of the sky, Pidgeot, in flying. Pidgeot easily got rid of the giant claw mantis's clumsy pursuit. However, because the giant mantis was constantly moving at high speed with the airflow, Pidgeot could not use special attack skills to attack it, and the two sides were in a stalemate. However, this stalemate was soon broken, because Asu lost his patience and took the initiative to attack. This clumsy posture is simply an insult to flying. Let me get to know you thoroughly. Pidgeot, use swallow return. Cry. Pidgeot let out a long cry, twisted his wings hard, and immediately flew back in the air, rushing down from above towards the back of the giant mantis. This angle was just perpendicular to the direction of the airflow that the giant mantis was riding, and it could avoid the giant mantis's defense. With Pidgeot's flexibility and speed, this attack was doomed to be unavoidable. In the blink of an eye, Pidgeot crashed into the back of the giant mantis, and the hard beak collided with the metal shell of the giant mantis, making a harsh sound. Under the blow, the giant mantis immediately lost its balance, but the giant mantis did not panic. Instead, it took this opportunity to flip its body and face Pidgeot head-on. Asu realized that something was wrong and quickly ordered, "No, Pidgeot, leave." Too late. Xuanjian shook his head and said, affected by the metal shell, Mantis performs poorly in long distance and flexibility, but in straight-line short distances, Mantis, which evolved from the fast attacker Scyther, has a reaction that few Pokémon can match. This is why Mantis has so many preemptive skills. While Xuanjian was speaking, Mantis had already launched a counterattack, and its two pincers swung out like lightning, submerging Pidgeot in the shadow of its fists. Pidgeot, hold on. Asu was unwilling to fail, and struggled to his death. It's useless. Xuanjian looked at the golden barrier that lit up on Pidgeot, shook his head and said, holding is suitable for those one-time powerful skills, and it doesn't work well for continuous skills like Bullet Punch. I know, but it's enough to catch your breath. Asu then ordered, Pidgeot, use your stand. The hold skill temporarily blocked the attack of the Bullet Punch. Taking this opportunity, Pidgeot took a breath and activated his stand when the hold skill ended, temporarily blocking the attack with his stand, and the main body successfully escaped from the fist shadow of the giant claw mantis. Seeing that Pidgeot, who had no power to fight back, actually escaped, the giant claw mantis's original listless state disappeared instantly, and its fighting spirit reached its peak. Under the urging of this fighting spirit, the giant claw mantis felt that it had taken the long-awaited kick, and suddenly, a dazzling light flashed on its body. Xuanjian also felt that his originally vague mental connection with the giant claw mantis became clear in an instant. With the experience of the previous breakthrough of the King of the Jewel Starfish and Charizard, Xuanjian understood that this was the breakthrough of the giant claw mantis. Closing his eyes, Xuanjian carefully felt the great amount of insights that the giant mantis had gained from breaking through the Heavenly King. At the same time, a condensed energy surged from the depths of the giant mantis's genes, tempering its body. The red paint on its body surface could not withstand the tempering and fell off, revealing a silver metal shell. After tempering, the giant mantis's body became stronger and its metal structure became more dense. After absorbing the insights and taking the opportunity to fully understand the changes in the giant mantis, Xuanjian issued an order in his mouth and mind at the same time. Giant mantis, light energy drives in. Following Xuanjian's order, a dazzling light shone on the giant mantis, as if it was about to use a cannon-like cannon. However, this time, the light energy did not gather on its giant claws, but gathered on the wings on its back, and was launched backwards as the wings flapped, generating a huge thrust, carrying the giant mantis towards Pidgeot. Giant mantis, give Pidgeot the final blow. Giant mantis nodded and raised its giant pincers. Intense energy gathered on it, which was the general type ultimate move, Megadon Impact. Asuk obviously saw that Pidgeot was forced into a desperate situation, but the speed of the light energy was too fast, and Pidgeot had no time to dodge. In desperation, Asuk could only order, Pidgeot, hold on. Unfortunately, luck was not on Asuk's side. The hold failed. The giant pincers carrying the power of Megadon Impact hit Pidgeot hard, making it lose its combat effectiveness instantly. I lost. After taking back Pidgeot, Asuk said calmly. As a gym trainer for so long, he had already accepted the fact that many challengers were far stronger than him. As long as he was with his favorite flying-type Pokémon, nothing else mattered. Thank you. Xuanjian said politely. Can you introduce the move you called Light Energy Drive? Asuk asked curiously. Yes, Xuanjian paused and said, this is a move based on the Cannon Beam Cannon, combined with some of the insights gained by Giant Claw Mantis when it broke through the King of Heaven. It is a skill that emits a large amount of excess steel energy to allow Giant Claw Mantis to increase its linear speed to an extremely high level in a short period of time. I see. Asu nodded. Although he still had many doubts in his heart, he knew that it was someone else's secret, so he didn't ask any more. Instead, he walked in front of Xuanjian and handed him a box. This is the wing badge and a flying gem. I hope it will be useful to you. Thank you. Xuanjian took the box and thanked him. After challenging the Kikyo gym and taking a short rest, Xuanjian and his party embarked on the journey back to Kanto again. The next Wakaba town will be the last place they stay in Johto. There's a GP egg waiting for him to claim it. Xuanjian, have you broken through the King of Heaven? Duogi asked during the chat on the journey. It's still a little bit short. Xuanjian said helplessly, I thought I could break through in this gym match, but I didn't expect the opponent to put too little pressure on me. I just barely let Mantis break through the king, and I didn't have time to play. I also think you won the gym match too easily this time, but I also think that Asu has really shown all his skills, and his level is very high. It should be that your strength has improved too fast, and the gym match can no longer meet your needs. Shota analyzed. It seems so. Xuanjian scratched his head. It seems that if it is not a particularly famous gym in the future, I don't need to challenge it. But this way, there will be fewer opponents. At this moment, Xuanjian deeply felt the loneliness of a master. Unless he deletes a file every time he arrives in a new area like Xiaozi, there will be basically few gym matches to play in the future. Xiaozi did that to become a Pokemon master, which requires him to have a deep understanding of various elves and needs to start from scratch. His goal is not this, so naturally he can't do that. Right. We basically don't have to play gym tournaments anymore after this. Let's go explore. Shota agreed immediately. The purpose of him and Genma going on the road together was to learn how to conduct research. However, Genma had to keep playing gym tournaments during the period of rapid strength improvement, so he didn't say much. Now that he heard Genma say that he didn't want to play gym tournaments anymore, he naturally agreed immediately. Explore? That's a good idea. Genma nodded in agreement. Okay, then it's a happy decision. Shota said happily. Slightly behind the two, Duoji was hesitant, but looking at the two people who looked excited, he finally just sighed silently. There are basically no gym tournaments anymore after this. Well, something that many people have been looking forward to for a long time is about to happen. Can you guess what it is? Chapter 260, The Battle for Tajipi. Sorry, I don't know how Tajipi hatched early. I'm really sorry for causing you trouble. In the Sora Institute, Dr. Sora was apologizing to Xuanjian with an apologetic look on his face. Xuanjian also looked depressed. As soon as he and his group arrived in Wakaba town, they rushed to the Sora Institute without stopping. After explaining their purpose and confirming their identities, Dr. Sora asked his assistant to take the Tajipi egg and hand it over to Xuanjian. Unexpectedly, when the two handed it over, Tajipi's egg actually hatched. This was embarrassing. Tajipi saw Xuanjian and the assistant named Ajin at the same time at first sight, but Tajipi was closer to Ajin. Xuanjian couldn't take it away, and Ajin also said that he liked Tajipi very much and wanted to raise it. Really, you guys are too amateurish. Duoga complained unceremoniously. Except for newly laid Pokemon eggs, most Pokemon eggs must be placed in the incubator. How can they be placed directly outside like this? It's okay if other places do this, but this is a research institute. The incubator will have an early warning of the Pokemon eggs to be hatched. If Tajipi's eggs are placed in the incubator, I will know in advance that it is about to hatch, and naturally there will be no such bug. Sorry. Dr. Soraji smiled apologetically. The Soraji Research Institute has just been built not long ago, the foundation is relatively shallow, and the equipment is insufficient, so there are not enough incubators. If you don't mind, pick one of the ownerless Pokemon in my research institute as compensation. Forget it, Xuanjian shook his head. As Dr. Soraji said, this research institute has too shallow foundation. The valuable Pokemon in it are all deposited by other trainers. The Pokemon it has are of no value except for the 3 starters. Not to mention that these 3 starters are prepared for novices, it is impossible for me to give them to myself. Even if I can give them to myself, I am not interested. After all, the 3 starters in Johto are already recognized as the worst batch. Although Pokemon and Pakasi are both very intelligent, Tajipi is as ignorant as a human baby. As long as you train it carefully in the future, Tajipi will definitely recognize you. Dr. Kongmu said. Ajin, quickly bring Tajipi over to Mr. Xuanjian. No, Ajin shook his head and refused. Tajipi obviously likes mine more. But that is Mr. Xuanjian's Pokemon. Dr. Kongmu scolded, and you gamble all day long, you are not suitable to be a trainer at all. I will. Ajin retorted, and at the same time pointed to Tajipi who was playing the poker cards that Ajin gave it on the ground, and said, and Tajipi also likes gambling. It would be a pity for Tajipi, a Pokemon like me who is born lucky, not to gamble. Follow me and you can become the gambling king of Chengdu. What's the point of being the gambling king? You don't contribute anything to the world. I originally felt bad about separating you and Tajipi, but now I think it's a wrong decision not to separate you. Xuanjian, we must stop it from taking Tajipi down the wrong path. Duoga said. As the head of the family, Duoga hated gambling, a favorite of the dude. Hearing what Jin said, he exploded immediately. Shota also nodded in agreement. He couldn't accept the fact that a precious elf like Tajipi was trained to be the gambling king. Ajin ignored him and went straight to Xuanjian and said, let's make a bet. If you win, Pakbi will go with you, otherwise, leave Pakbi to me. No, Dr. Kongmu said immediately. Xuanjian, don't bet with him, this guy is a natural gambler, he's extremely lucky, you can't beat him. It doesn't matter. Xuanjian smiled and said, this is also my chance to prove myself to Pakbi. Xuanjian squatted down and said to Pakbi who was playing on the ground, Pakbi, this is a fight held for you, you watch carefully, I am the most suitable person for you. Alice, Dr. Kongmu said helplessly, since you are willing, then I have nothing to say. But to express my apology, whether you win or lose, you can pick some props from me as my compensation. This time Xuanjian did not refuse, but nodded and said, thank you. After all, no matter how you look at it, Professor Soraki's side was wrong this time. Although Ajin wanted to keep Pokemon because he liked it, it was an indisputable fact that he snatched Pokemon from Xuanjian, and he just happened to lack some props, so there was naturally no need to be polite. Pakipi is a Pokemon blessed by God. It can be said to be the lucky king among Pokemon. It naturally favors those who are lucky. Although you are seen by Pokemon at the same time, your luck is obviously better than mine, so it naturally likes you more. As the saying goes, luck is a kind of strength. But strength is also a kind of luck. If I defeat you, It means that I am stronger than you and more suitable to be Pokemon's trainer. But I am not very good at gambling. I can only play the simplest game of guessing the size of the dice, and I require the assistance of Pokemon. Is that okay? As long as it is gambling, it's okay. Jin said with a look of success, and then added, the Pokemon cannot be psychic, nor can it have the ability to predict. Well, Xuanjian nodded, took out a Pokeball from his waist, and summoned Forkbit. Is this guy okay? Forkbit? Listen with your ears. No problem, I agree. Jin said. It is very difficult to use your ears to hear the number of dice, and he will definitely win. After discussing the conditions, Jin immediately began to prepare. Seeing Ajin constantly finding gambling tools from every corner of the institute, Dr. Kongmu's face became more and more ugly, but he probably didn't get angry because he was concerned about the presence of outsiders. However, Ajin's future life will definitely be difficult. Soon, Ajin set up a standard gambling table for guessing the size. Well, it was actually just a few boxes of dice and a dice tube. The reason why he took so long to find it was that Ajin forgot where he hid it. Then I'll shake the dice, okay? Dr. Kongmu asked. No problem. Xuanjian and Ajin nodded at the same time. Then let's start. Dr. Kongmu said, and then threw a dice into the dice tube and started shaking it. After shaking it a fixed number of times according to the rules, Dr. Kongmu stopped. Ajin immediately took out a piece of paper and wrote big on it. In order to avoid plagiarism between the two parties, the two were back to back. Xuanjian also wrote his choice with the help of the cross bat, and also chose big. Draw. Both guessed right. After checking the two people's notes and dice, Dr. Kongmu said. Then they rolled the dice again, but until Dr. Kongmu was exhausted and went back to his room to rest, the dice had increased from 1 to 3, and the two still couldn't decide the winner. It seems that the difficulty is too low. If it goes on like this, we will probably never be able to decide the winner. Let's increase the difficulty. Ajin suggested. Okay. Xuanjian nodded in agreement. Hearing Xuanjian's agreement, Jin immediately ran to laboratory, pushed out a blender, and said, the dice tube is too small, and 3 dice is the limit. Let's change it to this. And it's more convenient to shake the dice with this. No, said Shota, although the blender used in the laboratory is much quieter, it is still very loud and will interfere with the cross bats. And the more dice there are, the harder it is for the cross bats to judge, and you, Jin, have no such trouble at all. This is completely unfair to Xuanjian. But if you really want to decide the winner as soon as possible, this is the only way. Jin said with a look of grievance, or are you willing to keep gambling with me? I have no objection. I agree. Xuanjian raised his hand and held down Shota, stopping him from speaking and said, since I have made up my mind to defeat you, I will make you admit your defeat with conviction. Use whatever tricks you have. I want to let you know that in the face of absolute strength, these are useless. What a courage, Jin gave a thumbs up and praised, but don't deny if you lose. Don't worry, I won't. Xuanjian said, and then turned to the cross-shaped bat on his shoulder, please, cross-shaped bat. The cross-shaped bat nodded. It was the first time it encountered such a novel duel. Although it was not a battle, it felt that its blood was boiling because it could use its best ability to distinguish sounds. Boom. After pouring all the dice into the box, the mixer was started in a noisy roar, and the upgraded gambling game began again. Appendix, rules for guessing the size. A dice has 6 sides, with dots or numbers from 1 to 6 on it. Throwing out 1, 2, and 3 is small, and throwing out 4, 5, and 6 is big. By analogy, if there are multiple dice, the sum of the throw numbers is less than or equal to 3 times the number of dice, and greater than is big. I have never gambled before, so I guessed the rules I set myself, which should be basically reasonable. Continuing from the message in the previous chapter, it is a change in the plot, guess it quickly. Chapter 261, Steel Cannon Shrimp. Boom, the mixer was still roaring, and it was already night. Dr. Sora, who had collapsed, had recovered, but the two had not yet decided the winner. At this time, both of them were sweating. After the machine stopped again, they immediately wrote down their judgments on paper and handed them to Dr. Sora. Both are small, Dr. Sora said helplessly without checking the dice. If the two people had the same conclusion, even if they were wrong, they couldn't tell the winner. Based on previous experience, there was basically no possibility of guessing wrong, so he didn't waste his energy. Really, There is actually such a lucky guy. Duoga, who was completely numb from nervous worry, sat on the side, and Shota nodded in agreement. Although he didn't like Ajin very much, he was really amazed by his opponent's luck. If this level of good luck appeared in a battle between elves, it would probably even be able to pick up the mythical beast. On the other side, after hearing the result announced by Dr. Sora, Xuanjian took a deep breath, and didn't even feel annoyed. He closed his eyes and took a rest. It is not an easy job to distinguish dice by sound. It requires concentration and consumes a lot of energy to maintain. Moreover, the more detailed the identification, the more energy it consumes. The bat cannot support itself by itself. The reason why it can support it until now is that Xuanjian uses a mature spiritual connection to replenish the bat's mental power. This kind of mental power transmission is consumption. The consumption is not large between elves such as Charizard, which is also a king-level elf with a close relationship with Xuanjian. But if the object is changed to the bat, even if the relationship between the two parties is close, because Xuanjian and the bat have not been able to completely break through the king level, the consumption suddenly increases exponentially. It can be said that for every mental power transmitted to the bat, Xuanjian himself will consume 2. If it were not for the fact that humans are naturally stronger than elves in mental power, Xuanjian himself would be even more gifted and would have been dragged down long ago. However, even for Xuanjian, maintaining such a high intensity of supplying magic is a great burden, so in this rare respite, Xuanjian immediately closed his eyes to rest and recover. Ajin next to him was also sweating, but he was different from Xuanjian. Xuanjian consumed too much, and he was too nervous. Although he had not made a wrong bet so far, Ajin's psychological burden was much heavier than Xuanjian's. Because he knew that although he had good luck, he could not guarantee that his bets were 100% correct. The more times he bet, the more likely he was to make a wrong bet. This was also the reason why the previous tricks increased the difficulty, because Xuanjian could basically guarantee a 100% accuracy rate with 3 dice, but he could not. If he did it more times, he would definitely lose. If the difficulty was increased, his accuracy would not be affected, but it would only reduce Xuanjian's accuracy. However, Ajin did not expect Xuanjian to persist until now. You know, there are 3 boxes of dice in the blender now. Seeing that there was a tie again, Ajin felt that his heart was lifted again. After all, with each additional round, the possibility of losing was greater. At this moment, Ajin felt that his heart was so tired. This is the difference between making a living by your face and making a living by your ability. The strong are tired in their hearts, and the latter are tired in their bodies. The winner hasn't been decided yet. How about adding some more dice? Jin said in a low voice under the murderous gazes of Duoji, Shota, and Dr. Sora. Although he knew that it was a bit despicable to do so, the desire for victory in his heart still drove him to speak out his little plan. Okay. Xuanjian closed his eyes and said lightly. Jin, don't go too far. Dr. Sora scolded. It's okay. Xuanjian opened his eyes and said to Dr. Sora, I said I would make him lose convincingly, so I have to do it. Dr. Sora, don't worry. But, okay. Dr. Sora sighed, picked up a dice, and put it in the blender. Just a box. Xuanjian said again, I think it's time to decide the winner this time. Right, Zbat? Squeak. Zbat replied softly. Helplessly, Dr. Sora had to add a box of dice and then started the blender again. Amid the huge roar and the sound of the dice colliding, Xuanjian and Zbat closed their eyes together and distinguished them carefully. Because Xuanjian said that this round would decide the winner, everyone became nervous, and all the fatigue and laziness were swept away. They all stared at the blender, waiting for the result. Suddenly, Duoga seemed to have discovered something, poked Shota, and asked, have you noticed that the sound of the blender is not as loud as before? What did you say? I can't hear you. Shota said, but was surprised to find that no sound came out of his mouth. Then, the roar of the blender completely disappeared, and the entire institute suddenly fell into a strange silence. This strange silence only lasted for a short time and then stopped. Then everything gradually returned to normal. However, this made Ajin a little suspicious. As soon as it returned to normal, he asked loudly, what's going on? Dr. Kongmu's eyes flickered. He had a guess, but he was not sure. At this time, Xuanjian opened his eyes and said, this is the strange phenomenon caused by my crossbat just breaking through the King of Heaven. It doesn't matter. Although the machine has not stopped, I want to change the previous practice. Now place a bet. No matter what you bet, I will bet on the other one. Is that okay? Ajin looked at Xuanjian in doubt for a while, and finally said, okay, I bet on big. Xuanjian nodded and said, then I'll bet on small. Buy it and leave it. Yes. Ajin nodded. Although he had a bad premonition, it didn't matter what he bought because he relied on luck. Soon, the prescribed mixing time was up. Dr. Kongmu stopped the machine, opened the lid, and began to count the numbers on the upward side of the dice. At this moment, everyone except Xuanjian breathed a little. 6, 1, 3, 36 dice in total. The total points on the top are 100, which is less than 108, so it is judged as small. Xuanjian wins. Yes, we won. Duoji and Shota cheered immediately. What? This is impossible, you cheated. When the sound disappeared just now, you must have cheated at that time. Ajin screamed desperately. Sorry, although I tampered with the dice, I really didn't cheat, because the rules agreed upon before did not say that this practice is not allowed. Xuanjian said, and then patted the crossbat. Crossbat, show everyone your ability. Squeak, the crossbat nodded, then opened its mouth, and then everyone saw the dice in the blender jumping and rolling in front of everyone. Xuanjian's voice of explanation sounded at the same time. This is the new control ability acquired by the crossbat. It can affect the size of the dice by manipulating vibrations. I can say that I can make it big or small as I want. As long as I manipulate it before stopping, I don't think there's any rule in the casino that determines this as cheating, right? This, Ajin was speechless, and finally lowered his head dejectedly. I give up. Xuanjian nodded, picked up Tajipi who had run to his side at some point, and said, luck is uncontrollable and difficult to rely on. It is the support of the weak. The real strong are those who have enough strength to break the rules and even make the rules. Although Tajipi looks silly, as a favorite of God, its senses are very sharp, which is also the key to the continuation of this race. After Xuanjian won the bet and Ajin agreed to hand it over to Xuanjian, it quickly accepted Xuanjian, and Xuanjian's purpose of this trip was basically achieved. After a night's rest, the three of them embarked on the journey back to Kanto again. On the way back to Kanto, Shota looked at the Pokeball that Xuanjian was constantly playing with, and asked curiously, Xuanjian, what is so special about that Pokemon? It almost made you give up the Z crystal of the water system for it. Xuanjian accidentally found a precious Z crystal of the water system among the props collected by the Soraji Research Institute, but when the Pokemon came to express his willingness to follow Xuanjian, Xuanjian actually expressed his willingness to give up the Z crystal. You should know that from the beginning of the journey to now, Xuanjian has only received a Z crystal of the fire system given by others and a large fragment of the Z crystal of the psychic system, and has basically not seen anything else, which shows how precious it is. If it weren't for the generosity of Professor Soraji in the end, who gave both the Z crystal and the Pokemon to Xuanjian, Xuanjian would have lost the Z crystal of the water system. With such a comparison, Shota was naturally very curious about what was so special about that Pokemon. This Pokemon is called Cannon Shrimp, and it's exactly the water-type special attacker I wanted. It's a Pokemon from the Kalos region, but I didn't expect to meet it here. Although I owe Professor Saoki a favor this time, I still made a lot of money. And this guy is the first Pokemon who is willing to follow me, so I have to accept him. Xuanjian explained. Although it has shortcomings in speed and other aspects, its rare high special attack and super practical super launcher characteristics in the water system are enough to offset these shortcomings. With this Cannon Shrimp, the shortcoming of my lack of a special attacker in the water system has been made up. Xuanjian, you have now completely broken through the level of the king, and your mastery of Pokemon is even better than before. As long as you train well, this guy can definitely shine at the Quartz Conference. Duoga said. I think so too. After returning to Kanto, I will make the final preparations for the Quartz Conference. Xuanjian nodded and said that it was very close to the opening of the Quartz Conference, and it was time to train well. I must get good results at the Quartz Conference. Chapter 262, Escape of Gyarados. After exploring the Dragon Tomb, Xuanjian also obtained a Water-type Z Pure Crystal and 2 new elves. Xuanjian's trip was a great harvest. With a happy mood, Xuanjian and his party returned to Kanto. At Xuanjian's invitation, Shota and Duoga decided to go to Kyanmo village with Xuanjian to spend the time before the Quartz Conference. At this time, because they were tired after walking for a day, They camped by a small river at the foot of Xuanjian mountain. Because the opening time of the quartz conference was very close, after eating the delicious dinner prepared by Duoge, Xuanjian summoned the crossbit and Gyarados to practice fighting. Roar! Gyarados let out a huge roar, took the lead and launching an attack, used the dragon tail, raised its strong tail and smashed it towards the crossbit. The giant tail whipped out a whip-like sound of breaking through the air, and then whipped the ground fiercely, smashing a huge crack. But such a fierce attack did not work, because the crossbit had already responded and flexibly avoided the attack of Gyarados. After dodging the attack, Zbat immediately used its shadow clones, turning into bat shadows all over the sky. With the help of the newly awakened ability, these bat shadows can be completely mistaken for real ones, and Gyarados can't find its real body at all. However, Gyarados is not completely helpless. It sprayed a blue energy ball into the sky and activated the rain praying skill. This is a new skill that Gyarados learned after realizing the power of water. After the rain praying skill was used, the sky over the battlefield of both sides immediately began to drizzle. Although the rain praying skill used by Gyarados was not powerful in order to prevent bystanders from being affected, it was enough to destroy those fragile shadow clones. However, Gyarados unexpectedly discovered that the real body of Zbat had disappeared. For a moment, Gyarados was at a loss. As the saying goes, those who are involved are confused, while those who are on the sidelines can see clearly. Xuanjian and the other two did not have this doubt, because they all clearly saw that Zbat was actually staying in the blind spot behind Gyarados' head, and it kept moving as its head turned. In the past, Zbat would never dare to do this, because the sound of its wings flapping would immediately expose its position. But now that it has broken through to the level of a king, with the help of its new ability, Zbat is completely like a silent ghost. Its wings do not make any sound, and it does not even stir up any air waves, so that Gyarados cannot feel it at all. In the strange silence, Gyarados became more and more anxious, and turned its head greatly, exposing the weakness of its lower jaw. Taking this opportunity, Zbat quickly appeared at Gyarados' lower jaw and used the repay on its lower jaw. Zbat, which was wrapped in white light, hit Gyarados' lower jaw hard. Gyarados reacted when Zbat started to attack, but it was much slower than Zbat. It was hit by Zbat's attack before it could react. Gyarados suddenly felt a series of roars in his head, making it unable to react any other way. The huge body suddenly fell to the ground powerlessly. This move is really powerful. Even Gyarados can't stand it. Shouta, who was watching the battle, exclaimed. Ordinary repaying skills are certainly not so powerful, but combined with the penetrating characteristics of Zbat and the newly awakened ability, it can simultaneously inject vibration waves into the opponent's body at the moment of attack, disrupting the normal fluctuations in the body, causing this kind of confusion and paralysis effect. Few Pokémon can withstand it. Yes, this move looks like a physical move, but it ignores physical defense. Instead, it requires special defense to be better immune. It is very deceptive. If you don't know the details, opponents who are much stronger will also suffer a great loss. Duoga nodded in agreement. Once hit, the opponent will fall into a dual state of paralysis and confusion, and the opponent is almost meat on the chopping board. With this move, Zbat is completely enough to make up for the shortcomings in attack all along. Xuanjian fully agreed with the two's analysis. Although he was not the first to break through the Heavenly King, except for the giant claw mantis that directly awakened and learned new skills, Forkbit was the first Pokémon to successfully develop a new move based on awakening ability. With this move, it completely met Xuanjian's positioning of assassins in his team, and its strength was greatly improved, becoming the leading existence in the team. However, although he was very proud in his heart, Xuanjian couldn't show it, and he also had to consider the emotions of other Pokémons. Therefore, Xuanjian just said calmly, "Well done, come back and rest first." Then he took out the Pokéball and took back Forkbit. Then, Xuanjian came to the side of Gyarados. For Gyarados with thick skin and flesh, the damage caused by the previous attack was not great. It was just that the dizziness and paralysis were more troublesome. However, with its amazing physical fitness, Gyarados had recovered at this time. Xuanjian checked Gyarados' jaw and found that there was nothing wrong with it, so he took out the Pokéball and said, "Gyarados, come back and rest first." The red light shone on Gyarados' body, and it was about to be retracted. At this time, an accident happened. Gyarados suddenly stood up, broke free from the retracting light emitted by the Pokéball, roared to the sky, and then rushed into the stream next to it and disappeared. Gyarados' series of actions were completed in an instant. Xuanjian was stunned for a while before he reacted and hurried to the stream, but there was no trace of Gyarados. Duoji and Shota also reacted and quickly ran to the river to help look for it, but they also found nothing. It looks like it has left. Duoji whispered. Gyarados, where are you? Come back. Xuanjian shouted loudly without giving up, but there was no response. It looks like it ran far away or hid. Shota analyzed. Gyarados is a Pokemon with a strong sense of self-esteem. It was defeated by Spat without any resistance. It must be embarrassed, so it behaved like this. Alice. Xuanjian sighed, and said anxiously, Gyarados can be said to be the first Pokemon to follow me, even earlier than Charmander. Now, the partners who joined the team before and after it have successively broken through to the king level, and only it is stuck at the bottleneck. Therefore, it has been in a bad mood for some time. I already know all this, and I have enlightened it a lot during this period, but the effect is not great. Alice, I dare not let it out for battle practice today. It's not your fault, Duoga consoled. It's very common for a trainer's Pokemon to escape, and yours is one of the rare cases. Even if you don't call Gyarados out today, it will one day in the future, unless it breaks through the king level by then, otherwise it will still happen. It's better if the problem is exposed earlier, so that we can solve it earlier. The most urgent thing is to find Gyarados first, and we can think of other ways later. If we delay too long, Gyarados might encounter some danger. After all, Xuanjian's Gyarados is very different from other Gyarados in both appearance and inner qualities due to various opportunities and the careful training of the two, and it is easy to be targeted. Well, Xuanjian nodded, put his mood in order, and said to Duoga, Gyarados escaped from underwater, and my Steelix is not fast enough, so I can only ask you to help search. Duoga nodded and said, no problem, leave it to me. Come out, Squirtle. Chapter 263. Let's practice together. There are no traces underwater. Gyarados should have left the river from here. Duoga said to Xuanjian after listening to the report of Squirtle and Lanternfish who went to the bottom of the water to explore. Well, it should be. After all, we have reached the source of the river. The water ahead is too shallow and not suitable for Gyarados to move. And I also found traces of Gyarados activities on the shore. Xuanjian nodded and said, let's take Squirtle and Lanternfish back first. They worked hard last night. It was already evening when Gyarados left, and it soon became dark. Fortunately, Duoga's Lanternfish was lighting, otherwise he and his group would have lost Gyarados long ago. We have been looking for a whole night. Xuanjian, do you want to take a rest? Shota asked. He and Duoga were a little tired after not resting for a whole night, but compared to Xuanjian who was busy all night, the consumption of the two was not that great. If this continued, Shota was worried that Xuanjian would not be able to bear it. No, Xuanjian shook his head. Gyarados' strength will be greatly limited on land, and the situation will be very dangerous. Let's find it as soon as possible. Xuanjian said, and ran quickly in the direction of the traces left by Gyarados. Shota and Duoji looked at each other worriedly, and quickly followed. Gyarados is always an aquatic elf. Although it can move on land, it is far less flexible than in water. In addition, it is easier to leave traces on land than in water, so Xuanjian easily found the traces of Gyarados activities and moved forward much faster. However, Xuanjian also noticed that the traces left around him gradually became complicated, and there were even some traces of fighting and wanton destruction. Fortunately, from these traces, it seems that Gyarados has the upper hand and has not suffered any losses for the time being. However, Xuanjian did not relax, but became more worried and quickened his pace again. After passing through the woods on the mountainside, Xuanjian finally heard the earth-shaking roar of Gyarados again. However, compared with the usual roar of showing off its power, this time Gyarados' roar seemed a little frustrated. Xuanjian knew that Gyarados would only make such a sound when it was at a disadvantage in the battle. It seemed that Gyarados had encountered a powerful opponent. So Xuanjian quickly took out the Pokeball. Crosspit, go support Gyarados. Crosspit immediately took the order, flapped its wings and flew rapidly to the direction where Gyarados' voice came from. Xuanjian took a short breath and accelerated towards the target again. The mountain road was very rugged. In order to save time, Xuanjian didn't care to think too much and ran straight to the place where the sound came from. Soon, Gyarados appeared in his sight, but Xuanjian couldn't move forward anymore, because there was a cliff in front of him, and Gyarados and Crossbit were confronting a man in a black cloak with an abyss at the bottom of the cliff. Come out, Cannon Shrimp. Xuanjian summoned his newly acquired Pokémon. Charizard was not around, so the only Pokémon that could provide remote support was this new Pokémon. Cannon Shrimp, use Healing Wave on Gyarados' bat. Cannon Shrimp nodded, raised its right claw, which was even bigger than its body, and aimed at Gyarados' bat. Then, a stream of pink energy came out of the muzzle, accurately hitting Gyarados' bat. Gyarados' bat were stunned for a moment, and then they felt a warm healing power wrapped around their bodies. Zbat was not injured and did not feel anything, but Gyarados was already covered with scars, and immediately groaned in comfort under the healing wave. Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, you provide remote support here. I'll go over and take a look. Xuanjian arranged, and then threw out the Pokeball again. Bulbasaur, come over. Mantis, come out. A silver mantis and a sturdy Bulbasaur suddenly appeared on the cliff. Xuanjian ordered, Bulbasaur, use the Vine Whip to send me down. Mantis, pay attention to protect me and prevent the opponent from suddenly attacking. The Vine Whip of Bulbasaur is very strong for humans, but very fragile for elves. If the opponent takes this opportunity to attack, he will be in danger, so Xuanjian summoned Mantis, which is equivalent to half a flying elf, to protect himself. However, it turned out that Xuanjian thought too much. Until Xuanjian arrived at the bottom of the valley safely, the opponent did not make any unusual movements, but looked at Xuanjian and his elves with interest. Seeing this scene, Xuanjian's hostility was slightly reduced, and he walked quickly to the side of Gyarados. Seeing Xuanjian coming towards him, Gyarados twisted his body uncomfortably, but in the end he did not run away again, but moved forward and protected Xuanjian behind him. Xuanjian felt a little warm in his heart, and the slight discomfort caused by Gyarados running away from home immediately disappeared. After patting Gyarados' body, he began to look at the person opposite him. Before, the distance was far, and he was looking down from a high place, so Xuanjian did not find anything different. Now that he was face to face and close to see, Xuanjian found that the other party was incredibly burly, just like a giant. Xuanjian was well developed. Although he was only 13 years old, his height was almost 1.7 meters, but it only reached the waist of the other party. Calculated, the other party was at least 2.2 meters tall. This was the first time Xuanjian had seen such a burly person. Your Pokémon is well trained. When Xuanjian looked at the other party said in a strong bass voice. Perhaps because of his height and strong body, the other party did not deliberately amplify his voice, but Xuanjian still felt his ears buzzing. However, Xuanjian was relieved after hearing what the other party said. At least it seemed that the other party had no ill intentions, so Xuanjian asked, "Thank you for the compliment. I wonder why you attacked my Gyarados." Although the wound had been healed by the double healing wave of the Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, Xuanjian clearly remembered the wounds all over the body of Gyarados when he saw it just now. As a trainer, seeing his own Pokémon being beaten like that, he had to ask for justice from the other party. "Sorry," the other party scratched his head and said awkwardly, "I thought this Gyarados was wild before, and I wanted to tame it, so I fought it. Originally, I wouldn't have used such a heavy hand, but your Gyarados was in a bad mood before, and he didn't listen to advice at all, and was causing damage everywhere, so I used heavy hands. You also know that a Gyarados that gets angry is very destructive. If it is not stopped, it will cause great losses to other Pokémon and humans." As he said, the other party clapped his hands, and Xuanjian saw wild Pokémon with bruises all over their bodies crawling out of the bushes and behind the rocks next to him. With Xuanjian's eyesight, it was not difficult to see that it was done by Gyarados. Now it was Xuanjian's turn to be embarrassed. Xuanjian knew Gyarados' temper best. Usually, he would restrain himself under his control, but in the situation yesterday, it was a complete joke to ask him to restrain his temper. It was just venting its anger on the wild Pokémon, and it was very respectful not to cause large-scale damage. However, it was not a good behavior to attack wild Pokémons in such a wanton way. Xuanjian had to take the blame anyway, so Xuanjian could only say, "Sorry." Then he gestured to the Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, and then a healing wave was shot at many injured wild Pokémons again. These wild Pokémons had already become frightened birds under the attack of Gyarados. When they saw the attack coming, they wanted to escape immediately, But it was too late. They could only watch themselves being hit by the pink energy. However, the comfortable feeling on their bodies made them relax. When the pink energy disappeared, they found that their injuries were basically healed, and they jumped up with joy. Healing waves can only heal some minor injuries. If there are Pokémons with more serious injuries, I can help send them to the Pokémon Center for treatment by Joey. Xuanjian said. No need, I just checked, no one was seriously injured, and the healing wave is enough. The other party said after checking the wild Pokémons. That's good. Seeing that the other party didn't get too entangled, Xuanjian had a better impression of him, and at the same time, he was a little curious. Although his strength was limited on land, the guy who could easily beat Gyarados so badly would not be a simple guy, and he always felt familiar with him, as if he had seen him somewhere. But he was sure that he didn't know such a person, so who was this guy? After sending away the wild Pokémon, the other party spoke again. I will practice here for a while, so I don't want to see too much damage around here. It's great that you can listen to my advice. I think your Pokémon are well trained, so do you want to practice with me? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, Ziba's Advice. Hearing the other party's words, Xuanjian was stunned for a moment. After all, it had been a long time since he heard someone speak to him in such a tone. To say such words, one must have full confidence in one's own strength, otherwise it is easy to pretend to be awesome but end up getting fucked. Looking at the other party's sturdy figure, while recalling the plot he knew in his previous life, Xuanjian suddenly had a guess. Are you, King Shiba? Yes, if you are found out, you don't have to wear this. Shiba tore off the cloak on his body, and a muscular man with a naked upper body appeared in front of Xuanjian. It was undoubtedly the fighting King Shiba among the 4 heavenly kings of Kanto. It's really hard to get used to wearing this kind of clothes, Shiba said, moving his shoulders. As one of the 4 heavenly kings of Kanto, Shiba's popularity is no less than those superstars. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he always dresses like this when he goes out. After confirming the other party's identity, Xuanjian pondered for a while, and then said, it is of course a great thing to be able to practice with you, but I don't have any fighting Pokémon at the moment, and I need to prepare for the Quartz Conference, so I can only apologize. The Pokémon that need to be trained in fighting are only Aganotosaurus and Electabuzz, but these 2 Pokémon have found their own ways, and what they need is to consolidate their previous gains. It doesn't matter whether they practice with Ziba or not, and the improvement in strength is not obvious. Although it is a bit eager for quick success, the fastest way for him to improve his strength is to help Gyarados break through the king. Although it is a pity to miss this opportunity, Xuanjian believes that as long as he achieves good results in the conference, there will be more such opportunities in the future. Ziba looked embarrassed. It was rare for him to kindly guide others, but he was rejected. This was really embarrassing. I'm sorry, my first priority now is to help Gyarados break through to the king level, so I can only let you down, Xuanjian said sincerely. He had never met Ziba and didn't know how popular he was, so Xuanjian tried to be as polite as possible to avoid the other party getting angry because of being rejected and causing unnecessary trouble to himself. Ziba waved his hand and said, it's okay. It's a good thing to have your own ideas, but since you want to help Gyarados break through to the king level, why don't you let him train with me? Xuanjian was stunned and asked, training with you? Are you also proficient in water-type Pokémon? Although Ziba's title is the Fighting King, this is only because he is best at fighting Pokémon, and he is also a fighting master. Since he can become the strongest of the 4 heavenly kings in Kanto, Ziba is also not weak against other Pokémon, so Xuanjian wondered if he is also good at water-type Pokémon. But then Ziba denied Xuanjian's guess. My attainments in water-type Pokémon are not high, probably only at the level of an elite trainer. Currently, the only one in Kanto who has the strength of a king-level Pokémon in water-type Pokémon is probably Kona. The attainments in a certain type of Pokémon are not something that can be achieved by having a few powerful Pokémon of that attribute, but requires a full understanding of that type of Pokémon. So when talking about his low attainments in water-type Pokémon, Ziba also seemed very calm. Then, Xuanjian was even more confused. Since you don't have a high attainment in water-type Pokémon, why do you say you want to help your Gyarados break through to the king level? Shiba saw Xuanjian's doubts and did not continue to sell the crown. Instead, he explained, although Gyarados is indeed a Pokémon with the main attribute of water, the reason why Gyarados failed to break through the king level should not be due to insufficient perception of water power, but due to the serious energy conflict in its body. Energy conflict. That's right. You should know that Pokémon such as Gyarados and Charizard are called pseudo-dragons. This is because they have impure dragon blood in their bodies. These bloods are too thin. Not only are they not enough to show the dragon attribute, but they will also conflict violently with other attribute blood. The conflict of blood will be reflected on the individual, which will have a great impact. On the one hand, this conflict will allow the pseudo-dragons to gain a lot of energy and strong explosive power, becoming extremely powerful, but at the same time, this will also make the pseudo-dragons extremely arrogant and irritable. Due to the relationship between the attributes, blood conflict has more benefits for fire Pokémon such as Charizard that need explosive power, and the negative impact is not obvious. However, for water Pokémon such as Gyarados that do not require high explosive power, the benefits are not obvious, but the negative impact is greater. This is an important example of the theory of elf bloodline. I already know it. And according to the theory, this conflict will become more and more serious as the elf's strength increases. In order to prevent it from causing damage to the body, the elf's body will even spontaneously prevent the elf from improving. This is also the reason why Gyarados has difficulty breaking through the king level. I have already started to change it, but this congenital problem from genes is basically impossible to eradicate. I can only try to reconcile the conflict, but we have reached the limit at present, but unfortunately it is still not enough for Gyarados to break through the king level. Do you have any way to help it further reconcile? Xuanjian looked at Ziba expectantly. In fact, the conflict in his Gyarados is more serious than that of ordinary Gyarados, because its special evolutionary location allows it to obtain extremely pure water and flying energy, allowing the corresponding bloodline to be baptized, so that there is a situation of water, flying, and dragon fighting. If it were not for Duoge, the breeding master, to help reconcile in his own training of its energy control ability, Gyarados would not be able to improve its strength to the current level. No, and there's no need. Ziba shook his head and said, Gyarados has already done a very good job of harmonizing the energy in its body. I believe that even the guys I know would find it difficult to do better than this. What you need to do is not to harmonize the energy, but to strengthen Gyarados' foundation and improve its body's ability to withstand this kind of conflict. Increase the tolerance. Do you mean to increase the upper limit of the body's limitations? Yes, Ziba nodded. I don't have a way to completely break the bottleneck, but I can increase the upper limit of Gyarados' bottleneck and make the upper limit higher than the king level, so that Gyarados can break through the king level. Although this is a temporary solution and not a permanent solution, it should be enough for you at the moment, right? Xuanjian nodded. Compared with other powerful Pokémon, Gyarados is very easy to obtain, but the reason why it has not become a main Pokémon is not only its bad temper, but also its low upper limit of strength. The traditional approach is to cultivate it for a long time, allowing Gyarados' body to gradually adapt to the energy conflicts in the body, and let the physical fitness slowly improve, and eventually cross the king level, but he does not have that much time, so Ziba's method is a good choice. So how do we raise the upper limit? Of course it's fighting training, said Shiba. Seeing Xuanjian's confused face, Shiba continued to explain. Fighting training is not only useful for those elves with fighting attributes and elves that can learn fighting skills, but it is useful for all elves. It can effectively improve the elves' ability to control their bodies, and it is of great help to all elves that use physical skills. At the same time, through fighting training, the elves not only exercise their physique, but also their spirits will be tempered in hard practice, which is very useful for the long-term development of the elves. Xuanjian nodded and said, that makes sense. Then I will follow you to practice, and I'll leave it to you next. The update has been resumed. Please subscribe. Chapter 265 Different Understandings, Different Paths. Mayacha Mountain in the early morning is quiet and mysterious. The thick fog in the mountains is like a veil, covering its beautiful face. The newly born warm sun is also unwilling to be lonely, covering the veil with a touch of orange. Suddenly, the fog in the mountains fluctuated, and a slender blue dragon emerged from it, constantly shuttling through the fog, and then disappeared again in the fog. If this happened in Xuanjian's previous life, then the people who were lucky enough to witness this scene would definitely guess that it was a dragon that appeared, but there is no such creature in this world, so people are discussing what Pokemon appeared to cause this scene. It looks a bit like Gyarados in color and size, said a man holding a telescope. They all came here because they heard that mysterious elves were active here. Bullshit, how can Gyarados live in the mountains? How can it fly? Another immediately retorted. The person being refuted hesitated for a long time but could not say anything to refute. If the first question could be explained as being taken there by the trainer, then the second question could not be explained at all. After all, it was well known that although Gyarados was a flying-type Pokemon, it could not fly at all and did not even have many flying-type skills. Okay, stop arguing, let's go into the mountains quickly. I heard that many people have gone into the mountains overnight to find the truth. If we don't move quickly, our previous efforts will be in vain. Another man with a backpack said, and the two people who had been arguing nodded, stopped arguing immediately, packed up their things, and followed each other up the mountain. At the top of Maija Mountain, higher than the dragon just appeared, Xuanjian was taking Gyarados for daily training. About 3 meters above the ground, a slender blue Gyarados was tumbling in the air. The fog in the mountains was constantly gathered by it, condensing into drops of water, clinging to its body, forming a thin layer of water film, and together with the airflow ejected from its body, it held the huge body of Gyarados in the air. This is the truth of the dragon that appeared in the mountains. Good job, Gyarados. Xuanjian praised. Although it is extremely clumsy compared to those real flying Pokemon or elves with floating abilities, Gyarados really did fly. It is not easy to do this. Not only does it require Gyarados to have superb water and flying energy control capabilities, but it also requires the coordination of all the muscles in its body. The latter is extremely difficult for a Pokemon as large as Gyarados. Without the guidance and careful teaching of the fighting master, Ziba, Xuanjian feels that it would take several years to figure it out on his own. According to Ziba, if fighting Pokemon can achieve this, they will have a sense of ki and realize the existence of ki. In battle, they can exert 200% of their strength and learn the ultimate fighting move, the real ki bullet. For Gyarados, it is naturally impossible to learn a skill like the real ki bullet, but soon after the muscles of the whole body were coordinated, Gyarados also had a sense of ki, but the ki it produced did not run continuously in the body like the fighting Pokemon Ziba said, but it converged into the reverse scale and disappeared. This is the first time Ziba has seen this situation, but Ziba thinks it may be due to the special physique of Gyarados. Although it did not gain the new power of ki like the fighting-type Pokemon, after the ki feeling was generated, the violent blood conflict in Gyarados seemed to have found an outlet for venting. A large amount of energy generated by the conflict was converted into ki, and then disappeared in the reverse scales that were like a bottomless pit. Under such a transformation, the burden on Gyarados' body was greatly reduced, and the blood conflict was no longer suppressed by instinct, and became more intense. However, because there was an outlet for venting, the damage to the body was much less. For a while, Gyarados felt that the bottleneck was loosening. At the same time, Xuanjian also felt that the reverse scales should not be light in and out, but accumulating energy, waiting for the day of the outbreak. Therefore, although Gyarados has not been able to break through the king so far, Xuanjian did not have the slightest impatience, but calmed down to accompany Gyarados to practice. After completing the morning class, Xuanjian quickly took Gyarados back to the camp. Ziba had a big appetite that matched his body size. If he went back late, the delicious breakfast made by Multitrack would definitely be eaten up by him. However, Xuanjian was destined to not be able to go back on time for breakfast, because he met 3 acquaintances on the way. Zaya Ozzy, Zaya Aksha, Zaya Gang, why are you here? Xuanjian greeted. I vaguely remembered that Ziba and Zaya Ozzy had an encounter in the original novel. Could it be here? As I became more and more integrated into this world, I could no longer remember the things in my previous life. Brother Xuanjian. Zaya Ozzy greeted Xuanjian as soon as he saw him, and explained, we heard that King Ziba was practicing here, so in order to get good results in the Quartz Conference, I came here, hoping to practice with King Ziba and learn his great secret skills. Great secret skills? I haven't heard of them. Xuanjian shook his head. I have been practicing with Ziba for some time, but I have never heard of such a thing. Moreover, not to mention that secret skills are the things that each person has kept in his or her heart, and will not be easily passed on to others. Even if others are willing to hand them over, the two people's expertise must be very close. As for Xuanjian, the compatibility of the two of you is really too far apart. If you want to improve your strength, you should practice honestly. This is the time when you need to accumulate. Ah, is that so? Xuanjian said a little disappointedly, but the court's conference is about to begin, it's too late. That's right. Xuanjian nodded. He had also experienced such an embarrassing time of transition and could understand this feeling very well, but he had no way to help Xuanjian. After thinking for a while, Xuanjian said, "Then you come with me, maybe King Ziba has some good ideas." "Yes. Thank you," Xuanjian said, and then asked, "By the way, I heard that there are mysterious elves here. Have you found any, Brother Xuanjian?" "Mysterious elves?" Xuanjian shook his head. "No. There are many big onyxes on this mountain. If you are interested, you can subdue one." As soon as the voice fell, a huge roar came from the side, and Xuanjian immediately recognized that it was the roar of the big onyx. However, although he was very tempted, Xuanjian decided to find Master Ziba first. But Xuanjian was destined to be disappointed. Ziba did not answer his request, but just said that he could let him practice with him. Next, just like the original work, after close contact with Ziba, Xuanjian found that the other party was not as mysterious as he imagined, but was a cute uncle, so the three left disappointed. On the way back, the three encountered the huge onyx. Although the three sent out the superior team of Squirtle, Starfish, and Onyx, they were still defeated and Xuanjian was in danger. Fortunately, Shiba arrived at the critical moment and showed his power. With his superb fighting skills, Onyx suffered a great loss. Then he keenly discovered the sand-slash hiding in Onyx's body, relieved Onyx's pain, calmed it down from its madness, and successfully recovered it. Amazing. It's worthy of being King Shiba, Xuanjian exclaimed. Xuanjian nodded in agreement. It must be said that Shiba's move was absolutely perfect. If it were me, even if I were given a skill as strong as Shiba, I couldn't do it so beautifully. After all, the sand-slash hidden in Onyx's body was too difficult to find. Maybe when I become stronger and can communicate with any Pokémon I should be able to do this. Xuanjian thought secretly. At present, he could only communicate with his Pokémon through consciousness, and even those below the level of the King of Heaven could only transmit some simple information, which was far from the level of Shiba. However, to Xuanjian's surprise, Shiba told Xuanjian in the subsequent conversation that the so-called Great Secret Technique was the telepathy between humans and Pokémon. Xuanjian left happily knowing this. Hey, aren't you fooling people? When they were together in private, Xuanjian and Ziba were much more casual. After Xuanjian left, Xuanjian said, except for the Super Conquer tribe, being able to communicate with the spirit of the elves is a Super King level ability. That's not necessarily true. Ziba said, for some trainers, they are born with this kind of infectious power, which can make the elves open their hearts to them. Moreover, although the effects of telepathy and mental communication are similar, they are not the same thing. Mental communication is forced, the efficiency is relatively low, but it is relatively stable. Once enough accumulation is made, it can be easily done, but the consumption is large. Telepathy is voluntary for both parties, it is more efficient and consumes less, but this thing sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work. Is that so? Xuanjian nodded. No wonder Xuanjian's state is extremely unstable and his strength fluctuates greatly. It seems that this is the reason. So what you just used was not telepathy, but mental communication? Xuanjian suddenly asked. Ha. Ziba scratched his head awkwardly. I wanted to try telepathy, but you know, it's hard to succeed with wild and furious Pokémon. Xuanjian. The night Xuanjian came to visit, Ziba left, leaving Xuanjian and his party to practice alone. According to him, the basic structure has been completed, and the rest is just a matter of time. On the third day after Ziba left, after Gyarados finished his morning practice, the reverse scale finally filled up with air and began to change. The reverse scale first lit up and emitted a burst of bright light, and then a series of light spots sprang out from it and sank into other scales, lighting up the whole body of Gyarados. In this mysterious light, Gyarados' broad scales also fell off one after another, and fine scales grew again. Compared with the original broad scales, these scales are undoubtedly more defensive. After the transformation was complete, Xuanjian found that Gyarados had completely changed. If it wasn't for the fact that its head still retained the characteristics of Gyarados, some people would believe that it was a giant Hachosaurus. Breakthrough to the king level. Great, Gyarados. Xuanjian said happily, and Gyarados also rubbed his head against Xuanjian to express his excitement. So what abilities did Gyarados gain? Shota asked curiously. No, Xuanjian shook his head, but it gained something more important. Make up for yesterday's. Chapter 266 Fossilized Pterosaur. Xuanjian, don't train too late, remember to come back for lunch. Mieko called out to Xuanjian who was leaving. Got it. Xuanjian waved his hand without looking back, indicating that he heard it. This child is so cute. It's hard for you to take care of him all the way. Mieko said to Duoga beside him. No way, Duoga smiled with his lips pursed, and said a little embarrassedly, he also took care of me a lot. Auntie, let's go buy vegetables quickly, Uncle and Shota should wake up soon. Yes, they both drank too much last night and didn't eat anything. They must be hungry in the morning. Let's go quickly. This is the third day since Xuanjian returned home. After Gyarados broke through the king, everyone left Myacha Mountain and returned to Kyanmo village at the foot of the mountain. Returning to his long-lost home, Xuanjian naturally felt a lot more relaxed, and Duoga and Shota also integrated well into the family. They got along well with Xuanjian's parents, either indulging in housework or drinking and chatting, so happy. However, Xuanjian did not relax for too long. After all, the court's conference was about to begin, so Xuanjian went out for training early in the morning. When he came to an open space, Xuanjian took out a Pokeball. Come out, fossil pterosaur. A flash of light appeared in front of Xuanjian, and it was the fossil pterosaur that Xuanjian had captured in Dasha Valley before. However, compared to the skinny appearance when it was just captured, the fossil pterosaur in front of him looked radiant, and a terrifying aura permeated the body, showing the style of the top predator in ancient times. It looks like it has recovered very well. It seems that Xiaobo has taken the mastery of cloning technology to a higher level. Xuanjian praised with satisfaction. Unlike those elves that were resurrected from fossil fragments, his fossil pterosaur has been sleeping since ancient times. It has not lost its ancient experience due to death, and still retains the comprehension of the king level, which is far from comparable to those elves that are equivalent to being remade. But at the same time, time has also severely damaged its body. Although it has been in a deep sleep, its body has indeed aged over time, otherwise Xuanjian would not have been able to subdue it so easily. The aged fossil pterosaur is naturally of no value except for research, but fortunately Xuanjian and Xiaobo had developed the reincarnation technology before, so Xiaobo reincarnated the fossil pterosaur again and finally succeeded, obtaining the fossil pterosaur in front of him, which has both the experience of the king level and the young body. The young body plus enough experience, this is another king level elf. This time, Xuanjian's king level elves officially reached 6, enough for a king level full staff duel. However, this opportunistic method is not without drawbacks. In addition to the problem of reduced control over the body, the fossil pterosaur also showed signs of rebellion. You know, even ordinary Pokémon will disobey the trainer's orders after their strength increases, not to mention the fossil pterosaur, which was taken advantage of by Xuanjian, was not carefully trained, and had an extremely bad temper. At this time, the fossil pterosaur was staring at Xuanjian with a look of looking at food, but it had suffered too much from Xiaobo, so it didn't dare to easily provoke the humanoid creature in front of it. What a headache. This kind of look, there is no consciousness of treating me as a trainer. If this guy is not trained well, if he is released thinking of the scene where the fossil pterosaur treats people as food, Xuanjian shuddered instantly. Not everyone has the ability to fight this guy. In order to prevent such a terrible thing from happening, he must completely subdue it. Looking at the fossil pterosaur, which has begun to get a little anxious and is about to fly away, Xuanjian dared not delay any longer. It will probably be difficult to communicate with a language, so try this. As he said, Xuanjian raised his head and looked directly into the eyes of the fossil pterosaur, and his mental power surged out like a tide. This is not that Xuanjian has awakened any new ability, but an ability that breaks through the king level, to connect with Pokémon mentally. Although the mental connection cannot cause damage to the elves, it is after all initiated by the trainer and has a certain force nature. The fossil pterosaur is originally an extremely arrogant elf, and this behavior is simply a naked violation for it. For a moment, the fossil pterosaur was furious and rejected Xuanjian's connection, and at the same time activated its own sense of oppression. Unfortunately, Xuanjian is not an elf, and did not use any skills, but was engaged in a mental contest, so the sense of oppression is invalid. Feeling the rejection of the fossil pterosaur, Xuanjian pulled a smile at the corner of his mouth. Being able to reject my mental connection, it seems that you are also at the king level mentally. It seems that the mental damage caused by reincarnation that I am worried about has not occurred. If it is below the king level or incomplete king level, except for elves with certain attainments in mental power, this kind of mental connection cannot be rejected at all. The fact that the pterosaur was able to resist its spiritual connection showed that its strength was well preserved. As long as it was given a period of adaptive training to fully adapt to its new body, it would be able to restore its former glory as the overlord of the sky. Feeling the tightly closed heart of the pterosaur, Xuanjian shook his head. It has a stubborn temper, but it's useless. Then the tide-like spirit forcibly blasted open the door to the spiritual world of the pterosaur and forcibly established a spiritual connection. There was no way. The spiritual strength of ordinary people was far beyond that of most Pokémon, not to mention a freak like Xuanjian. Even if they were at the level of a king at the same time, the pterosaur had no ability to resist mentally. After blasting open the door to the spiritual world of the pterosaur and establishing a spiritual connection, Xuanjian stuffed all the information he had prepared into the brain of the pterosaur. Although Xuanjian only transmitted some basic information about the modern world and some information closely related to the pterosaur, it would only take a few minutes of days to process it with the processing speed of the human brain, but for the pterosaur that had been living in ancient times, everything was extremely unfamiliar, and there was a huge gap with its original cognition. Suddenly, the brain of the pterosaur froze. Did I accidentally develop a new skill for humans at the level of a king? I just told it some common sense. Xuanjian touched his chin and said to the pterosaur that fell to the ground with its mind in a mess. He did not realize that due to the gap in cognition, what was taken for granted for him or modern elves was like a heavenly book to the pterosaur. After being knocked down by Xuanjian accidentally, the pterosaur woke up after about an hour. Although Xuanjian knew through the mental link that it had not completely digested the information he told it, Xuanjian knew that the pterosaur had remembered the most important part of it, which was enough. Well, at least now the pterosaur no longer had to look at itself as food. It had realized that although the hairless guy in front of it looked very similar to those monkeys that were used as food in terms of appearance and genes, they were actually very different. It is rare to see life in the world tens of thousands of years later. Fossil pterosaur, become my elf and come and see this brand new world together. Xuanjian invited. The pterosaur nodded. After accepting the knowledge imparted by Xuanjian, the pterosaur was able to understand Xuanjian's meaning. However, before Xuanjian could be happy, the pterosaur roared again. Through the mental connection, Xuanjian clearly understood what it wanted to express. I can submit to you, but you have to pass my test. Okay. Xuanjian nodded and said. Then, the pterosaur told Xuanjian the way of the test: successfully ride the pterosaur and conquer the sky with it. Please subscribe. Chapter 267 Fall. The broad and powerful wings cut through the sky, and the lavender figure flashed by. Xuanjian clung tightly to the back of the fossil pterosaur, lowered his head, and tried to minimize the contact surface with the air to prevent himself from being blown away by the fierce wind. Compared with the Charizard he had ridden before, the fossil pterosaur had a wide wingspan and a body shape more suitable for flying. After obtaining a young body, its flying speed naturally far exceeded that of the Charizard. Although the sky is no longer the same sky, the fossil pterosaur has not forgotten its outstanding flying skills. After obtaining a young body and returning to the sky after a long absence, the fossil pterosaur, the former overlord of the sky, immediately recovered his past memories. The fossil pterosaur used gorgeous flying skills such as dives, emergency stops, and reversals continuously, and coupled with its superb speed, even after training and riding a Charizard, Xuanjian suddenly felt his stomach churning. He lowered his head and took a deep breath, suppressing the feeling of wanting to vomit. Xuanjian said to the pterosaur, "Keep going." Although he knew that the pterosaur was deliberately tormenting him, Xuanjian would never admit defeat and would never give up the opportunity to completely tame the pterosaur. Seeing that the series of fancy flying just now failed to do anything to Xuanjian, the pterosaur was also a little surprised. You know, it had shown no mercy just now. Whether it was in its impression or in the knowledge given to it by Xuanjian, humans were a kind of fragile land creatures. There was no reason to be able to persist in such fancy flying. Maybe I didn't fly high enough? The pterosaur thought so, and then turned around and flew higher in the sky. Damn it, this guy, it's worthy of being a pterosaur. Xuanjian found that the pterosaur was flying higher in the sky, and first cursed secretly and then sighed. The altitude where the two were before was already the limit of most flying elves. Going up, it is the troposphere. The atmosphere in the troposphere is obviously lower than that below, and it is full of clouds condensed from water vapor. Seeing the clouds floating around, the pterosaur let out a strange cry, and immediately rushed towards it with Xuanjian, and plunged into it. Suddenly, Xuanjian felt that his clothes were immediately wet by the water vapor in the clouds, and quickly condensed into frost, wrapping Xuanjian like a snowman. However, as a warm-blooded animal, humans are actually much more resistant to cold than reptiles, not to mention that pterosaurs are twice as weak to ice. When Xuanjian felt that he could still hold on, the pterosaur could not wait to rush out of the clouds. Haha, it seems that I won this time. Feeling the sunlight shining on his body, the frost melted quickly, and Xuanjian said to the pterosaur proudly through his thoughts. The pterosaur snorted coldly, refusing to admit his mistake, and continued to fly upwards, and soon left the troposphere and came to the stratosphere. The stratosphere is the flight limit for most flying elves. The air here is already extremely thin. Even birds of prey such as pigeon and toucan only fly to such a height during migration, using the parallel airflow here to migrate. Xuanjian panted heavily. Human lungs are very different from those of these flying elves. It is difficult to get enough oxygen in such thin air. Even with Xuanjian's extraordinary physique, he still felt a blackness in front of his eyes, which was a manifestation of insufficient oxygen supply. At this time, the seed that had been dormant in Xuanjian's body for a long time moved, and a trace of Changpan's power was squeezed out of it. Although it was only a trace, the Changpan's power immediately brought great changes to Xuanjian. The Changpan's power derived from plants was evenly dispersed on Xuanjian's exposed skin, and began to absorb sunlight and convert it into energy for Xuanjian to consume. With the help of this trace of Changpan's power, Xuanjian gradually adapted to the thin air around him, stopped panting, and began to look at the scenery around him. It's so beautiful. Xuanjian said softly. Above his head was the crystal-clear upper atmosphere, and he could vaguely see the outer space. The sunlight was shining down without any obstruction, illuminating the whole world. Under his feet were the clouds that were constantly undulating like waves, and he seemed to have become the god standing on the clouds. No wonder people in mythology always imagined that gods lived above the clouds. Indeed, only such a beautiful place could be worthy of the noble word god. How is it? Fossil pterosaur, did I pass the test? Xuanjian asked the fossil pterosaur. The fossil pterosaur did not answer. The fossil pterosaur could not find a reason to deny that someone could still ride steadily on his back after reaching the stratosphere and had the leisure to appreciate the surrounding scenery. However, for its pride, it was absolutely impossible to admit failure, so it answered with silence. Xuanjian did not care about the silence of the fossil pterosaur, but patted its back and said, "Then please take your fastest speed and take me for a ride in the clouds." Although he knew that the fossil pterosaur had already recognized him, Xuanjian knew that the two sides still needed to run in, so Xuanjian first issued this order that was currently the most in line with the fossil pterosaur's mind. For this kind of order, the fossil pterosaur would never refuse it anyway. It immediately pulled up its wings and rushed forward at the highest speed, leaving behind a series of sonic booms. After going through the discomfort caused by the initial sudden acceleration, Xuanjian began to enjoy the pleasure of this high-speed galloping. Watching the white clouds being left behind and feeling the strong wind blowing on his face, how can this taste be described in one word? And all of Xuanjian's feelings were also transmitted to the fossil pterosaur through the mental link at the same time. For a time, the two sides had a feeling of knowing each other and their mutual affection increased greatly. However, as the saying goes, happiness leads to sorrow. When one person and one pet were enjoying the pleasure of galloping freely in the air, tragedy happened. An unknown object wrapped in purple light rushed up from below at a speed exceeding the speed of sound, and collided with the flying fossil pterosaur. Boom! The collision between the two sides produced a violent explosion. Although both sides had a protective layer formed by spontaneous air condensation around them, and it was not the most violent head-on collision, The speed of both sides was too fast, so the power of the collision was no weaker than the head-on collision of 2 billion-ton impact skills. Under the violent collision, the purple light ball was shot down and disappeared, and the fossil pterosaur was instantly seriously injured and lost. Although it still had a trace of consciousness under its forced persistence, it had completely lost the ability to fly and fell from a high altitude together with Xuanjian. Oh no! While falling rapidly, Xuanjian reached for his waist, but found that he had taken the wrong Pokeball when changing clothes this morning. The ones he brought were all guys who could not fly, and he didn't even have a half-baked one like Gyarados. The fossil pterosaur also tried desperately to open its wings again, but it was seriously injured and had completely lost control of its body. Come back, fossil pterosaur. Xuanjian took out the Pokeball and took back the fossil pterosaur. There was no point in keeping it outside, so it was better to take it back. With the protection of the Pokeball, it would not be hurt too much even if it fell from a high altitude. After putting away the Pokeball, Xuanjian sighed, "Alice, now it depends on my luck." Then he stretched out his body, tightened his clothes, and tried to increase the air resistance as much as possible to slow down the falling speed, but it was better than nothing. Then he closed his eyes and let his body fall down. "Sorry, I have been a little busy these days and have not updated on time. I will make up for it later. There was a problem with the background before, and I haven't seen the reward list for a long time. I saw it today, and I was surprised that there was actually someone who gave the most rewards since the book was published. There are many people who have given rewards, so I won't thank them one by one. Anyway, thank you all for your kindness, and I will continue to work hard." Chapter 268 First Encounter. What's going on? Haven't I fallen to the ground yet? After closing his eyes, Xuanjian used the newly reactivated power of Changpen to block most of his senses, quietly waiting for the judgment of fate. After all, even if he was lucky enough not to die, the feeling of being seriously injured on the ground would not be pleasant. However, after waiting for a long time, Xuanjian found that his body seemed to have no changes. Puzzled, he could not help but slightly open his eyes. Saved. He opened his eyes and saw a purple light. Then, Xuanjian was surprised to find that he was floating in a ball of purple energy about 1 meter above the ground. It was this ball of energy that dissolved the damage of falling from a high altitude. As if sensing Xuanjian's awakening, the energy ball gently put Xuanjian on the ground without waiting for Xuanjian to react more, and then flew back to the body of a Pokémon in the air. Xuanjian then noticed the elf that saved his life. "You are." Xuanjian looked at the elf in front of him in surprise, not expecting that the two sides would meet in this way. "Do you know me?" Xuanjian hesitated for a moment, thinking of the mysterious telepathy of the psychic Pokémon and his own expression that had revealed the truth, and gave up the idea of lying. "Of course I know you, the famous Mewtwo. How could I not know you?" A glimmer of purple flashed in Mewtwo's eyes, and he nodded and said, "You didn't lie to me." Then he asked curiously, "Am I famous?" Xuanjian just breathed a sigh of relief and was about to congratulate himself for his wit, but he didn't expect to hear Mewtwo ask the second question, and he almost couldn't breathe. However, years of experience allowed Xuanjian to adjust quickly. "Of course. You are the first generation of super beasts that want to destroy the world, and the most successful artificial Pokémon. How can you not be famous?" "But it feels like many people and Pokémon don't know me," Mewtwo said doubtfully. The psychic Pokémon's super sixth sense told it that the person in front of it was not lying, but as far as it knew, few people knew about its own affairs. Xuanjian also reacted and quickly said, I mean that you are very popular among informed researchers." Just when he said this, Xuanjian suddenly shuddered, as if this person was particularly concerned about his origin. If he said this, he would not be destroyed by humanity, right? However, Xuanjian did not know that under the deception of the dream taper, Mewtwo had actually accepted the fact that he was an elf created by humans based on dreams. Therefore, he did not care about Xuanjian's statement of his origin, but thought that Xuanjian was one of his own and completely let down his guard. "Is that so?" Mewtwo nodded, and then stopped talking. Instead, he fell on the rock next to Xuanjian, looking up at the sky as if thinking about something, but those lifeless eyes clearly told others that he was actually in a daze. Looking at the dazed Mewtwo, Xuanjian wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Although Mewtwo was not at a high level at present, the momentum of the super beast was already revealed. Even if it did not show hostility, he, who was already at the level of a king, actually felt a sense of oppression in front of it. After thinking for a while, Xuanjian took the initiative to say, "Thank you for saving me just now." Hearing Xuanjian's words, Mewtwo came back to his senses from his daze and said, "You're welcome, I was the one who knocked you down." Xuanjian. So you are the culprit, no wonder that ball of purple energy looked so familiar. After a few seconds of silence, Xuanjian continued to ask, "Why did you fly so high in the sky? I remember that in some PM series works in my previous life, Mewtwo also liked to rush into space to abuse himself, but it seemed that he did so because he was not satisfied with his origin. The person in front of me seems to have solved this problem. There is no reason to do this again, right? I'm looking for the meaning of life." Mewtwo said, "They told me that from the moment I was created, the meaning of my existence was to help Team Rocket realize their dreams, but for some reason, I always feel that this is not the case. In my spare time, I have explored many places, but found nothing. I have read a lot of books about you humans, and found that the universe is the most mysterious place, so I want to go there to find the answer. Is that so?" Xuanjian scratched his head, "But I don't think it's possible to find it this way. But I don't have any other way." Mewtwo said, then turned to Xuanjian and asked, "Can you give me some advice?" Xuanjian shook his head and said, "Sorry, I don't know either." Although in the original work Mewtwo finally found the meaning of his survival as helping other elves, not to mention how unreasonable the process was, it is impossible for Mewtwo to accept this setting into his current state of mind. After thinking for a while, Xuanjian said, "I can tell you my own thoughts, I hope it can help you. For me, what I want to do in this life is to stand out, become an outstanding scientist and researcher, find a wife who loves me, have a few lovely children, and live a happy life. Going further, I hope to be remembered by future generations. And fighting for these is the meaning of my life." Mewtwo nodded and said, "It sounds wonderful, but it's a pity that it's useless to me." Xuanjian sighed. Yes, as a unique super beast, Mewtwo is unique in the world, and it has no gender. In this way, the most important desire for reproduction for living things is not there for it. It is a product of human cloning technology, without parents, brothers and sisters, and naturally no family affection. As for being remembered in history, as the most successful artificial Pokémon of mankind, even surpassing its prototype Mewtwo is destined to be remembered in history from the moment it was born. And for super beasts with almost infinite lifespans, even on the day when human civilization is destroyed, they are still young and strong. The meaning of existence is something that only ordinary creatures need to consider, because their lives are too short, and they must try their best to burst out a ray of light. For an existence like Mewtwo, the right thing to do is to lie high in the clouds, watching the ups and downs of the world, occasionally get excited, play around in the world, and if they really don't feel like it, then just dream for 1,000 years. Mewtwo has this kind of trouble because it is too young, has not realized its own power, and has not yet erased its emotions in time. Otherwise, like the other super beasts, which one would not have turned into a mythical existence, and only show one or two sides occasionally. Although he thought so in his heart, Xuanjian knew that he couldn't say this to Mewtwo, because it needed it to understand all these in a long time. Moreover, he actually didn't want Mewtwo to become like other super beasts, gradually being erased by time and becoming only instinctive, constantly cycling between being awakened and sleeping. After thinking for a while, Xuanjian said, "I am not you, so I can't think for you what to do to find the meaning of life. But I know that if you do nothing, you will definitely not gain anything. Just like many people I have met, they didn't know what they wanted at the beginning, but they didn't stop, but chose one thing in one direction to work hard. As they experienced more and more things, they finally understood their hearts and found what they wanted. If you find that you can't find the answer, then start to choose to do one thing wholeheartedly." Mewtwo pondered for a moment, and finally nodded, "It sounds reasonable. Then I'll start now." As he said, Mewtwo took off and flew away. "Hey, you dropped your things." Xuanjian pointed to a string of gold necklaces on the rock where Mewtwo was standing just now and shouted, "It's for you. My hunch tells me that it will be useful to you." Mewtwo paused, and then a voice sounded in Xuanjian's heart, and then Mewtwo accelerated and disappeared from Xuanjian's sight. "Will it be useful to me?" Xuanjian picked up the necklace curiously. Generally speaking, the premonitions of psychic Pokémon are very accurate, not to mention super beasts like Mewtwo. I just don't know what it is. The necklace is made of pure gold. Although it is luxurious, it is not very expensive for Xuanjian. However, when Xuanjian's eyes fell on its beads, he couldn't help but said in surprise, "It turned out to be this. Guess what prop it is?" I hope everyone will leave a message for each chapter to let me know you are still here. Chapter 269 Final Preparation. Although he had gone through a lot of twists and turns, and even met Mewtwo in advance, Xuanjian still successfully completed today's training goals. Even because Xuanjian chose to take the fossil pterosaur back into the Pokéball at the critical moment to try to save it, the fossil pterosaur completely accepted Xuanjian. Although the two sides have not cooperated well enough due to the short time they have been together, Xuanjian believes that after a period of running in, he and the fossil pterosaur will definitely become a perfect pair. In addition, the gift that Mewtwo gave Xuanjian also greatly improved his strength. Outside Kyanmo village, on a flat lawn, Xuanjian was putting the reprocessed necklace on Bulbasaur's neck. In the middle of the necklace, there was a strange stone, which was the Mega Evolution Stone exclusive to Bulbasaur. Okay. Xuanjian put the necklace on Bulbasaur, clapped his hands and looked at it with satisfaction. Since Bulbasaur's evolution is completed continuously, its foundation is a bit superficial, so Xuanjian has always let it polish its foundation and didn't let it do too many battles. Duogi on the side said, "That's great. With this Megastone, not only has Bulbasaur re-entered the first sequence of the team, but Xuanjian's shortcomings have also been made up. Because he is taking the elite route, although the elves under Xuanjian are strong, they are not numerous and do not cover all attributes. This is also inevitable for Xuanjian's rapid growth. Those rare attributes can be ignored, but among the elves under Xuanjian, the grass type, which is an extremely common attribute, lacks a fairy that can support the facade. Grass type is one of the three major attributes that are mainstream along with fire and water. It can adapt to most venues and can use the power of the surrounding sun, which has a huge advantage in open-air battle venues. Without a strong enough grass-type elf, Xuanjian's trip to the Quartz Conference will definitely be much more difficult. Although he has Leaf Elf and Bulbasaur, both elves are currently only at the advanced elite level, and it is a long way from breaking through to the king. Now that Xuanjian can put together a king team, his position is very embarrassing. But it's different after getting the Mega Stone. As long as it Mega evolves, Venusaur can be used as a king-level Pokémon. Yes, although the improvement brought by the Mega Stone is temporary, the upper limit of the strength of the trainer has soared a lot at once. Such props are really terrible. Xuanjian also sighed. How many people have gone through countless hard training to get the Pokémon of the king, while others can offset these efforts with just one Mega Stone? It's really terrible. I don't know how far the Kalos region has developed Mega Evolution. I don't know if Kanto can still maintain its position as the strongest alliance if it continues. You handed us over today just to see Venusaur with a Mega Stone. Shota saw that Xuanjian began to be dazed, and asked hurriedly. According to past experience, if he was not interrupted at this time, this guy would probably be in a daze for several hours. Hearing Shota's words, Xuanjian woke up from his meditation, shook his head, and drove the messy thoughts out of his head. He was just an insignificant ordinary citizen at present, and it was not his turn to worry about such a big thing. Of course not. We are going to make final preparations for the Quartz Conference today. Final preparations? Duogi and Shota asked at the same time. Xuanjian nodded and took out a Pokéball. Electric Beast has accumulated enough energy. I'm going to let it evolve. Electric Beast, Shota stroked his chin and said, I remember that guy was carrying a prop called a power amplifier, and then evolved through communication exchange. We can help with the communication exchange, but I don't remember you getting the power amplifier. Xuanjian nodded and said, yes, I don't have a power amplifier. But the power amplifier is actually a box full of electrical energy, and it's easy to find a substitute. Through my research, I found that the evolution of Electric Beast is actually the genetic recombination of Electric Beast under the dual stimulation of the radio waves of the communication exchange and the powerful energy provided by the power amplifier. After taking the atavism potion, the genes of my Electric Beast have gradually changed. Now I just need to provide enough energy stimulation to complete the evolution. As he said, Xuanjian took out a map with a red circle and said, with the level of my Electric Beast, even the power amplifier can hardly provide enough energy stimulation, so I changed the evolution plan. As he said that, Xuanjian pointed to the red circle on the map. Here, upstream of the small river outside the village, There is a power station that was abandoned due to line reconstruction. As long as I get there, my Electabuzz can get enough electrical energy for evolution. The basement of the Takua Gym, one of the temporary bases of Team Rocket. The dream-inducing taper was complaining to the just-returned Mewtwo in a caring tone, "Your Majesty, you ran out again. The world outside is very dangerous. It's not good for you to do this. If you want to go out, you can tell us and we will go out with you. I just went out to relax. Don't worry, no one can hurt me," Mewtwo said confidently. With its strength, it is difficult to encounter an opponent that it cannot beat. Even if there is, it can easily escape with teleportation. "Oh, Your Majesty, you are wrong to say that. You must know that people are treacherous. Although you are powerful, you are too young and can be easily deceived." The dream-inducing taper said that the more people or things Mewtwo contacts, the smarter it will be and the less likely it will be deceived. Therefore, the dream-inducing taper has always tried to avoid Mewtwo's contact with the outside world. Unfortunately, Mewtwo is too powerful and can easily get rid of its surveillance and run out to wander around. Fortunately, Mewtwo is a loner by nature and rarely communicates with other lives, so its mental growth is not much. Mewtwo shook his head, like a middle school boy facing his parents' second-year son. A feeling of helplessness rose in his heart, and then he gave up the idea of telling the dream-inducing taper that he met a very interesting person today, and said instead, "I know. By the way, you can tell Sakuki that I agree with their plan." "Your Majesty, why did you suddenly agree again?" Although he was surprised that his mission was completed, the dream-inducing taper was still surprised that Mewtwo suddenly changed his mind. You must know that he had rejected the plan because it was boring before. "Well, I feel a bit bored, so I want to find something to do and see if I can find anything interesting." The site returned to Xuanjian. After determining the target, Xuanjian and the other two followed the map to the abandoned hydroelectric power station. However, to everyone's surprise, this hydroelectric power station was unexpectedly lively. "There are so many electric elves," Duoga said. "Although they are all some Thunderbolts, Magnetron, Pikachu and the like, you should know that electric elves are very wild. I didn't expect there to be so many here, and there are actually several evolved naughty Thunderbolts, Pikachu and 3-in-1 Magnetron." "Yes," Xuanjian nodded, "although this hydroelectric power station is abandoned, it has not been demolished and is still in operation. It must be to provide these wild electric elves with a place to obtain electricity. The acquisition of electricity is a reason that limits the number of wild electric elves. If there is no human intervention, in addition to converting energy and food, they can only obtain electricity from natural lightning, which greatly compresses their living range. But with so many wild electric Pokémon, how can we get Electabuzz to get electricity? We don't have any Pokémon with moisture characteristics," Shota questioned. "Wild Pokémon have a strong sense of territory and will not easily give electricity to others. Although it is not difficult to defeat these Pokémon with Xuanjian strength, the problem is that there are many Thunderbolts and naughty Thunderballs. These Pokémon will explode if they disagree. If they are not handled properly, this power station will be blown up. The Mountain Man has a clever plan," Xuanjian said, and then summoned Venusaur, Vulpecula, Mega Evolve. In the dazzling light, Venusaur's already huge body became stronger again, and the flower tree on its back was strengthened again. Venusaur evolved into Mega Venusaur. Venusaur itself has the ability to make plants flourish, and this ability is more obvious in Mega Venusaur. As soon as Mega Venusaur appeared, the plants around it began to grow wildly. In a short while, the weeds on the ground grew half a finger high. Mega Venusaur. Shota blinked. "You want to use hypnotic powder? But this stuff doesn't work well on Thunderbolt and Magnetron. Skills like hypnotic powder and poison powder have little effect on these Pokémon whose bodies are made of metal. Not just hypnotic powder, Mega Venusaur, first use rooting, then use Vine Whip to tie up all the electric Pokémon, and finally use ultimate absorption and hypnotic powder at the same time." Mega Venusaur nodded, and dense roots stretched out from its back and pierced into the ground, connecting with the surrounding vegetation and gaining their blessing. Then countless vine whips shot out from its back, trapping the electric Pokémon that were playing around. The moment these electric Pokémon were tied up, they immediately launched electric skills to counterattack, and for a moment, the field was lit up with dazzling electric light. Unfortunately, the vine whip's conductive effect was not good. Venusaur was slightly injured and recovered quickly with the help of rooting. When the electric elves launched an attack, Mega Venusaur launched the ultimate absorption. Suddenly, the electric elves felt a terrifying suction from the vine whip, and the energy in their bodies suddenly poured out and was sucked away by the vine whip. Well done, the timing was very good. Xuanjian praised. Taking advantage of the opponent's attack, the ultimate absorption was launched when the energy in the body was opened. With the right timing, this ultimate absorption achieved twice the result with half the effort. Immediately after the ultimate absorption, Venusaur used the hypnotic powder skill, and hypnotic powder immediately sprayed from the pistol and sprinkled on the electric elves. The electric elves, who had lost a lot of energy and were in a weak state, immediately fell into deep sleep without any resistance. Okay, it worked. Xuanjian said happily, and then threw the Pokemon ball. Go, Electabuzz, use the abundant electricity here to complete your evolution. Electabuzz nodded, rushed into the power station quickly, and began to absorb the current generated by the generator frantically. Although this is an old-fashioned hydroelectric power station, the power generated by the generator cannot be underestimated due to the abundant water supply in the dam. However, even so, it took Electabuzz 3 hours to absorb enough current and start evolving. What a terrifying power demand! This kind of power demand cannot be met by props at all. Fortunately, we came directly to the power station, said Shota. Looking at the power station completely surrounded by the white light of evolution and the interlaced current, Xuanjian said, it may be because Electabuzz's genetic adjustment is relatively large, so it requires more energy. In fact, if the electricity is not sufficient, it can also evolve, but it will not reach the perfect state. After absorbing so much current, I don't know how powerful the evolved Electabuzz will be. It's really exciting. I had something to do on the weekend, so I was delayed for a while. Sorry. Chapter 270, Departure, Target, Quartz Plateau. There was only 1 week left before the opening of the Quartz Conference. Although the contestants could arrive 2 days later, Xuanjian did not want to miss the grand opening ceremony, so the group set off early. Under Xuanjian's persuasion, his father Sanjing and his mother Miyako decided to go to the scene to cheer for their son, but because they had to bring their daughter who was still studying at the Pokemon Academy, and also in order not to disturb their son's practice, the two did not go with Xuanjian. Because this world is vast and sparsely populated, and there are Pokémons with extraordinary powers, the transportation in this world is actually very underdeveloped, and it is not like the previous life with a well-connected transportation network. After all, human inventions are too fragile for elves. If no one is specifically looking after them, the roads or railways that have been built with great effort will be easily destroyed by a Pokemon duel. Therefore, before reaching a place where they can take transportation, people who go out, especially trainers, have to walk or drive themselves. For ordinary people, driving is of course the best choice, but for trainers, it is just the opposite. For trainers, you may encounter elves on the road at any time, some of which are worth conquering. Moreover, walking is more flexible and you are more likely to encounter some interesting people or things. If you drive, you may miss these. In the past few days, Xuanjian also met many elves with potential, but unfortunately, these elves are no longer suitable for his current level. Xuanjian was also thinking, if there was no accident when he was traveling, and he turned to the Orange Alliance halfway, what would happen today? At noon, the three of them took a temporary rest by a small river. They planned to have lunch and wait until the sun was not so strong before leaving. As long as they arrived at the target town tonight, they could take the train to the Quartz Plateau venue quickly. I feel like I seem to have forgotten something, Xuanjian said while eating the delicious bento prepared by Duoge. Perhaps it was because I was getting more and more integrated into this world and I didn't deliberately remember it, so my memory of some events in the Pokemon world in my previous life became more and more vague. After all, before crossing, this was just a part of my entertainment, and it accounted for too small and insignificant a proportion in my life. Hearing Xuanjian's words, Duoge's originally happy and relaxed expression suddenly disappeared, and he said helplessly, "Here we go again. Every time you say something, it means that we are going to encounter some strange troubles again." Xuanjian looked apologetic. There was no way. Most of the plots that could make him remember deeply were some more distinctive plots. Maybe not this time, Xuanjian said. After all, the protagonist is Ozzy, and he won't be there every time. I think maybe we have already encountered it. Shota calmly finished his lunch, and then wiped his mouth while pointing to the sky not far away and said to the two people who were staring at him, Look, what is that? Xuanjian and Duoga turned their heads and found that the sky had been filled with a layer of black fog at some point, blocking all the sunlight, and this layer of black fog was still expanding rapidly. In a blink of an eye, it expanded to the top of the three of them. Xuanjian. What is it this time? It looks very powerful. Duoga also quickly finished his lunch and asked. This momentum is almost catching up with the last time he summoned Kyger's power in the desert of the Unova region. Let's go and have a look and see. Shota suggested excitedly. Compared to challenging the gym, this is more in line with his hobby. Xuanjian pondered for a moment, then said, okay, let's go. I'll go first, please, pterosaur. Climbing up the broad back of the pterosaur, Xuanjian soared into the sky under Shota's envious eyes and flew towards the target. With the speed of the pterosaur, Xuanjian soon saw the creator of the sky-covering black fog, a huge Jengar. What a big guy! Xuanjian immediately took out his camera to record this scene. The size of this big guy is not much less than the Dragonite that he met at this Henghu lighthouse before, but compared to the huge Dragonite, this Jengar feels more dull and does not have the evil charm of ordinary Jengar at all. However, even though this Jengar seems a little dull, its strength is very terrifying due to its huge size. The best proof is that Xiaozi and his group were chased away in front of it and had no way to deal with it. This big guy's a good opponent. Let's practice with him. Going behind Jengar, Xuanjian threw out 3 Pokeballs, summoning Bulbasaur, Lampshade, and Arcanine respectively. With the size of this Jengar, physical attacks probably won't work on it, so special attacks might be more effective. Bulbasaur, use Clearing first. Then Lampshade, use Flame Vortex to attack this big guy. Xuanjian ordered loudly. Dazzling light shot out from the pistol on the back of Venusaur, dispelling a small piece of black fog above its head and letting the sun fall again. With a blessing of the sunny state, Lampshade immediately gathered all its strength to attack Jengar. The blazing flames gushed out from the Lampshade, enveloping Jengar's huge body, making it unable to continue chasing Xiaozi and his group. Seeing the giant Jengar surrounded by flames, Xuanjian did not take it lightly and continued to order, Wind Speed, use Big Word Explosion, Venusaur, prepare Sun Flame. As soon as Xuanjian finished speaking, he saw the giant Jengar tearing through the vortex of flames ejected by the light ghost and regaining his freedom. Seeing this, Wind Speed immediately launched an attack, and a large character flame immediately spewed out of its mouth, hitting Jengar's back. Then, the sun flame emitted by Venusaur also arrived, and the dazzling light pierced Jengar like a sword, hitting the center of Big Word Explosion. Boom! After the sun flame and Big Word Explosion met, the two sides catalyzed each other and caused a huge explosion. In the huge explosion, a gap was blown out of Jengar's body surface, but as the body tissue moved like water, the gap disappeared. Such a fierce attack has no effect. After the attack, Xuanjian looked at Jengar, who seemed to be unscathed, and said in surprise. Although neither Windy nor Venusaur has reached the king level, they are only slightly weaker than Xuanjian's other king level Pokemon with their naturally high attribute values. The combination attack just now was too much for even the king level Pokemon, who are good at defense. Are you going to reveal your trump card? Xuanjian stroked his chin. The king level Pokemon and Mega Evolutions were his trump cards. Xuanjian was unwilling to reveal them unless it was absolutely necessary. At this time, the giant Jengar came back to his senses from being attacked by Xuanjian and turned around. Seeing that it was actually a few little bugs attacking him, he was furious and immediately launched an attack. Oh no, it's Night Spectre. Light Ghost, Windy, Burn, Venusaur, Sun Flame. Xuanjian immediately recognized the skill used by Jengar. It was the Ghost-type Night Spectre. The attack power of this skill is determined by the Pokemon's level. This giant Jengar is obviously of a high level. If it is hit, it is estimated that the 3 Pokemon will not just lose their combat effectiveness. The dark purple light collided with 2 strong flames and a golden beam of light. In the end, accompanied by a violent explosion, the 2 sides ended in a draw. Looking at the unharmed Jengar and the 3 Pokemon on his side that consumed a lot of energy, Xuanjian sighed helplessly and was about to take out his trump card. At this time, there was a commotion not far away, and an equally huge Alakazam appeared in everyone's sight. Everyone, the quartz conference is another day when many supporting roles are online. Please leave the supporting roles in the comment section of the post. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 Super Ancient Pokémon. The appearance of the huge Alakazam immediately attracted Jenger's attention. Jenger gave up fighting with Xuanjian and walked towards Alakazam. Xuanjian was relieved. The pressure brought by the huge Jenger was too great. Even if Xuanjian used his trump card, he was not sure if he could beat it. "Everyone, come back and rest first," Xuanjian said to his three elves. Bulbasaur and Windy Dog nodded obediently and dragged their tired bodies back to the elf ball, but the weakest one among them, the lamp ghost, shook his head and refused Xuanjian's order. It staggered in the air and didn't look like it had just experienced a big battle. "Lamp ghost, what's going on?" Xuanjian asked in confusion. Among the three elves, the lamp ghost had the lowest strength. Logically, it should consume the most energy, but looking at this guy, it seems to be very energetic. Hearing Xuanjian's question, the lamp ghost staggered in front of Xuanjian. Xuanjian communicated with it mentally while observing it. At this glance, Xuanjian really found the reason why it was so energetic. This guy was constantly absorbing the power leaked by the huge Jenger. The lamp ghost continuously absorbed the black mist emitted by Jenger from the surrounding air, and gathered and condensed into drops of black liquid in its lampshade-like body. These droplets fell on the flames and were immediately quenched into a dark blue color under the burning of the flames. Then, they merged into the body of the lamp ghost like lamp oil and disappeared. "Is this the power leaked by Jenger?" Xuanjian said in surprise. Under normal circumstances, elves will not leak energy to the outside, unless the elf's body is already in a state of collapse, but this Jenger obviously does not look like it is about to collapse. Is this the difference between the super ancient elves and modern elves? Now Xuanjian has remembered the relevant plots and has become more and more curious about these huge ancient Pokémon. According to the research of elf scientists, the elves in the super ancient Pokémon civilization period are not much different from modern elves. If there is any big difference, it is the evolution of elves like Jenger. Although the super ancient times sound relatively long, it is actually the period when human civilization was born, only more than 1,000 years ago. It's just that the once powerful civilization, like it appeared, quickly disappeared in the long river of history, leaving many unsolved mysteries, so it is called the super ancient times. As we all know, elves such as Jenger and Alakazam evolved through communication, but this way of evolution was undoubtedly discovered after the appearance of the elf switch. But this kind of elves has appeared in ancient times, so how did ancient trainers evolve them? This question has always been a curiosity for scientists, but unfortunately, due to the lack of relevant information, the answer has not been found. Maybe this is why this giant Jenger keeps leaking energy. Xuanjian guessed as he looked at the lamp ghost. This guy just found a large piece of black matter and was happily chewing it. Xuanjian recognized that it was the tissue that fell off the body of Jenger after being attacked by Bulbasaur and Windy Dog in the battle. The black tissue was soon eaten by the lamp ghost. Xuanjian found that the breath of the lamp ghost became much stronger. In other words, its level has actually increased significantly. Suddenly, Xuanjian looked at the giant Jenger not far away with a different look. This guy is simply a huge experience pack. Such a good opportunity can't be missed. Lamp ghost, fossil pterosaur, let's go quickly. When Xuanjian arrived at the place where the giant Jenger and Alakazam were fighting, he unexpectedly found that Xiaozi and his group had met Duoji and Shota, and the two sides had a dispute. The two big guys who were fighting lively on the side were actually ignored by them. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Xuanjian ordered the fossil pterosaur to land on the ground and asked several people. Xuanjian. Hearing Xuanjian's question, Duoji explained, this Miss White interpreted the stone tablet in the ruins, saying that the fight between these two elves will destroy the world, but Shota and I think this statement is too ridiculous. With the level of these two elves, how can they destroy the world? Dr. White, you are blinded by the short-sightedness of the super ancient people. I have seen powerful elves before. Although these two big guys are powerful, they are too childish compared to the Rayquaza I have seen before. How can it be possible to destroy the world at this level? It must be that the people of the super ancient civilization were short-sighted, so they left such a ridiculous record. Xuanjian nodded and looked at White. Are you the famous Dr. White? I am Xuanjian. I have heard of you for a long time. The one in front of him can be said to be a true genius. It is said that he interpreted the super ancient Pokémon text at the age of 6. Unfortunately, the archaeology of this life is the same as the archaeology of the previous life. It sounds beautiful, but it is actually a very marginalized subject. It can't occupy the mainstream position in the field of science. Even with a halo of the super ancient civilization, it can't change this. So although he has made great achievements, his fame only stays in the field of archaeology, and the outside world rarely hears about it. Hello. White nodded, and then said, I stick to my opinion. I believe that there is a reason why the people of the super ancient civilization left the records on the stone tablet, and the elves in your hands can't fight any of them, right? Look, in the duel between the two of them, the door to the other world has begun to open. Everyone hurriedly looked at the two fighting elves and found that the skills of the two elves collided with each other, generating a wonderful power, and actually opened a thin space crack. Is this the gate to the other world? What will be behind it? Shota asked curiously. Don't worry about what's behind it. Please stop them quickly, otherwise our world will be destroyed. White said nervously. This is really a fallacy. Shota shook his head and said, since it is a force that can destroy the world, how can we stop it? Why don't we wait and see what's behind that gap? We can't wait any longer. Xuanjian said, I can feel that the crack is connecting to another unknown world. Although the size of the crack will not allow anything that can destroy the world to come over, it is a completely unknown world after all. Anything that comes over may have a huge impact on this world, at least the humans and elves in Kanto. The dangers in the other world are not just those powerful lives, sometimes those tiny bacteria and viruses are more deadly. Just like when Europeans on Earth explored America, the people who really died in major disasters such as shipwrecks were only a fraction of those who fell under the ravages of strange bacteria and viruses. Okay. I'll listen to you. Shota shrugged helplessly. He originally wanted to see what the life in the other world looked like, which would be very helpful for his research on the origin of elves. But those two guys are too strong, can you beat them? Duogi asked worriedly. Although he was confident in Xuanjian's strength, he knew that the two guys were definitely not easy to deal with by looking at their size. Don't worry, I have a way. Xuanjian said, and then took out two Pokeballs. Come out, Leaf Elf, Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, please. I don't expect double monthly tickets, I don't want to write during the National Day, I want to go out and play, what do you think? Chapter 272 The Secret of Super Ancient Civilization. The super ancient civilization is a mysterious part of human civilization history. It is like the Mayan civilization on Earth, with a contrast between extreme development and backwardness. After a high prosperity, it suddenly declined rapidly and disappeared quickly in the long river of history, leaving only mysteries for future generations. According to some archaeological studies, the super ancient civilization has reached an extremely high level of use of elves, which is almost comparable to modern humans. Even compared with modern people, some of their unique uses of elves are difficult for modern people to catch up. Xuanjian has a hunch that if he can deal with these two huge super ancient Pokémon in front of him, he may be able to obtain the secrets of the super ancient civilization. However, it is not an easy task to deal with these two big guys. According to Xuanjian's estimation, even if he is full of energy and uses all his strength, he can only kill one of them. In fact, not to mention that this will reveal his trump card in advance, he currently does not have all the king elves on him. Therefore, Xuanjian can only outsmart them in this battle. Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, use Dark Wave on Jengar. Xuanjian first gave the order to Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, who immediately raised his right arm, and a strong dark wave gushed out, hitting Jengar who was entangled with Alakazam. Dark skills have double damage to ghost skills, and with the increase of the super launcher characteristics, even Giant Jengar suffered a big loss if he didn't check. After being attacked again, Giant Jengar immediately wanted to settle with Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, but was immediately entangled by Giant Alakazam who took advantage of the fire. This is Xuanjian's purpose, to first unite with Giant Alakazam to kill Giant Jengar. Seeing that Giant Jengar was entangled by Giant Alakazam and couldn't get away, Xuanjian also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, he was betting that the two Pokémon did not have enough tacit understanding. Otherwise, if the two sides joined forces to kill the troublemaker first, then he would have no choice but to run away. Okay, let's do it again. Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, use the evil wave on the middle of Jengar's tail. Leaf Elf, rush over and use the leaf blade on the part hit by the evil wave. Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp raised its right arm again, But this time it did not rush to attack, but brewed for a while before launching the attack. After its brewing, this time the evil wave was condensed together, and hit Jengar's short tail like a laser, opening a huge gap in the middle of the tail. Leaf Elf immediately caught up, and the leaves on its head turned into huge blades, cutting off Jengar's tail along the incision. Ouch! The giant Jengar immediately cried out in pain after its tail was cut off, and stopped fighting with the giant Alakazam, holding the broken tail with both hands, and jumped around in pain. Seeing this, Alakazam had no sympathy at all and combined the two spoons in his hands into one, turning it into a huge spoon, and slapped Jengar's face hard. As a last resort, Jengar had to put aside the hatred of the broken tail and refocus on the battle with Alakazam. Well done! Xuanjian praised. Although Jengar quickly regrew its tail, Xuanjian noticed that it seemed to be smaller in size, and began to lose the battle with the giant Alakazam. Perhaps because it was afraid that Xuanjian would continue to attack it, the giant Jengar intentionally let Alakazam to move the battlefield, leaving only the broken tail on the ground. The light ghost that was floating beside it could not wait to rush over and eat it. "Leave some for me," Xuanjian shouted, and then took out a handful of test tubes from his bag and rushed over to take samples. Soon, Xuanjian collected enough samples, and the battle between the two giants became more intense, but it was Alakazam who steadily suppressed Jengar. "Let's help Jengar." Xuanjian brought the steel arm cannon shrimp and the leaf elf to the battlefield again, and then ordered, "Same attack method, but this time our target is Alakazam's left leg." Steel arm cannon shrimp nodded and sent out evil waves to Alakazam again. This skill was no less harmful to it than to Jengar. Then the leaf elf jumped and the sharp leaf blade instantly cut the giant Alakazam's slender left thigh. Alakazam's physical defense was a mess, even this giant Alakazam was the same. Under the continuous attacks of steel arm cannon shrimp and the leaf elf, Alakazam's left leg was cut off by the sharp leaf blade. Alakazam, who was attacking the giant Jengar, instantly lost his balance and fell to the ground. Perhaps angry at Alakazam's attack, the giant Jengar, who had been suppressed for a long time, did not feel sympathy at all. He immediately rushed over and launched a big tongue lick at the giant Alakazam, pressing it under his body and unable to move. In desperation, the giant Alakazam could only use instant movement to escape, and then use self-regeneration to grow a new left leg. However, after this incident, the size of the giant Alakazam was greatly reduced, and its strength became lower than that of Jengar, and it was severely suppressed by Jengar. Don't these two big guys learn a lesson? They are fighting again without caring about anything. White said speechlessly, looking at Xuanjian who was fighting again and completely ignored the hatred of broken tail and broken leg next to him. "Isn't this a good thing?" Duoga said with some dissatisfaction. "Do you have to let them chase us and attack you to be happy?" No. White explained hurriedly, "I'm just curious about the behavior of these two big guys." Xuanjian nodded, and while sampling the broken leg of Alakazam, he said, "You are very observant. These two guys are indeed a little abnormal. When I first saw the giant Jengar, I thought it looked rather dull, and the giant Alakazam behind gave me the same feeling. You know, both Jengar and Alakazam are extremely smart among the elves, and this situation is not normal at all, so I suspect it is caused by the special cultivation method of the super ancient civilization." "Special cultivation method?" White asked in confusion. "Well," Xuanjian nodded and said, "modern Jengar and Alakazam evolved through communication exchanges, and they only appeared in large numbers after the appearance of switches. The ancient civilization obviously did not use this method to obtain Jengar and Alakazam, and they are also very different from modern Jengar and Alakazam, so I suspect it is related to their special way of cultivation and evolution." Xuanjian paused and continued, "I don't know more. After all, this is also a huge mystery left by the ancient civilization. Since this relic preserves such precious ancient civilization elves, I think there will be more information. I suggest you investigate it carefully." White nodded and lowered his head to think. Xuanjian didn't say much, turned around and took the two elves to the giant Jengar and the giant Alakazam again. He was going to continue to use the tactics just now to weaken the two big guys. Hurry up, God knows when the giant Jigglypuff will wake up. If it also gets involved, then things will be even more chaotic. I must deal with these two big guys before Jigglypuff wakes up. The saddest thing is not having a holiday, but not knowing what to do on holiday. All my best friends have girlfriends, and I am left alone and don't know what to do. Sigh, poor single dog. Finally, I wish everyone a happy National Day and Mid-Autumn Festival. Chapter 273 Recovering the Troops. Well done, Leaf Elf. Xuanjian praised again, and then cast his eyes on Jengar and Alakazam not far away. Under Xuanjian's continuous sneak attacks, the size of the two elves has shrunk greatly, only half of the size at the beginning. Keep working hard, Leaf Elf, Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp, we will succeed soon. Xuanjian encouraged. Although they did not fight Jengar and Alakazam head-on, the continuous powerful attacks consumed a lot of energy for the two elves. In contrast, Jengar and Alakazam were still full of energy even though their size had shrunk by half, which made people sigh that the super ancient civilization was indeed outstanding. But that was the end. Jengar and Alakazam had been weakened to an acceptable range. He could stop the meat-cutting tactics and take them down in one fell swoop to obtain the two complete super ancient elves. Hearing Xuanjian's encouragement, the already exhausted Leaf Elf and Steel Arm Cannon Shrimp cheered up and were about to start attacking again. Suddenly, Xuanjian waved his hand, signaling them to stop, and then looked up at the sky. The other onlookers saw Xuanjian's actions and followed his lead. They immediately found a group of black dots in the sky and approached them rapidly. Soon, everyone saw a group of people in uniform riding Pidgeots to the sky and then jumped down from the air. The Alliance is doing business, all the outsiders should step aside. We have these two big guys. As soon as these people landed, they immediately began to clear the field arrogantly. Why? Xuanjian said dissatisfiedly. He had finally weakened the two elves of the ancient civilization, but these people intervened in the middle and jumped out to take advantage of him. How could he tolerate such a thing? For this, the leader, a gloomy man with a crew cut, raised his thumb and pointed to the symbol on his chest. Xuanjian took a look and found that it was a symbol he had never seen before. What is that? No, Xuanjian was just halfway through his words when Shoto suddenly pressed Xuanjian's shoulder and stopped him from continuing. Don't be impulsive. Shota said softly, these guys have a complicated background. They are the recycling troops under the Alliance. Don't mess with them. Recycling troops? Xuanjian asked doubtfully. He had never heard of such a troop in the Alliance. Judging from their style, it's more like they are the Rocket's subordinates. Seeing Xuanjian's puzzled look, Shoto was not surprised at all. After all, this was originally a piece of news that was circulated in a very small range. He just heard him say, I remember you said that food must have both positive and negative sides, and the Alliance is the same. The Alliance we usually come into contact with is its sunny side, and in secret, there is an unknown side that maintains the stability of the Alliance's rule. Do you understand this? Xuanjian nodded. This was expected. After all, there will always be some problems that cannot be seen in the light during the rule. At this time, a black glove is needed to help deal with it. This kind of black glove is a must for a mature organization. Then this recovery team is, yes, Shota nodded, and it is not only the power of the dark side of the Alliance, but also the most powerful one among them. They are responsible for dealing with all unfavorable factors that threaten the Alliance's rule, and have the power to execute first and report later. Although the elves left behind by the super ancient civilization will not threaten the Alliance's rule, if they insist on intervening, others will give them face. After all, this does not seem to be a big benefit at the moment. Xuanjian nodded, and suppressed the little thoughts in his heart with some regret. It was a pity that he wasted so much energy and finally lost the biggest piece of fat. However, Xuanjian took a look at the light ghost whose aura had greatly increased and whose level had almost doubled, and comforted himself that at least it was not completely fruitless. Seeing Xuanjian surrender, the crew cut didn't bother too much. He turned to look at the two super ancient elves and said, elves from super ancient civilization? Okay, I'll take them. Everyone listen up. After I use see-through, use destruction death ray on these two big guys. After that, the crew cut made a gesture to his Pidgeot, and Pidgeot immediately used see-through on Jengar. A triangular emergency appeared on Jengar, which meant that its attribute immunity was completely invalid at this time. After the crew cut Pidgeot used see-through, others also issued orders to their Pidgeots. For a while, golden beams of light lit up at the same time and shot at the giant Jengar and Alakazam. What a terrifying power! Xuanjian exclaimed. The strength of these Pidgeots individually was not strong, and they were weaker than the second-tier elves in his hands, but their cooperation was very exquisite. Although they used powerful and difficult-to-control skills such as the Destruction Ray, with their exquisite coordination, The skills did not produce much offset between each other, but poured all the power onto the two huge super ancient elves. Xuanjian estimated that even if his strongest elves appeared, they would not be able to withstand a single blow after such a joint attack. This is the power of legion combat. Most of the time, the recycling troops perform tasks alone, so the combined attack skills are not very strong. Shota said. Xuanjian nodded. It was true. Compared with the artificial cell egg legion he had seen before, this kind of coordination was too simple. However, even if the Pidgeot army did not show the essence of legion combat, with the ultimate move of the destruction ray, the power of this round of attack was still very considerable. Because of the dazzling light of the destruction ray, the huge Jengar and the huge Alakazam in the center of the fire could not see what was going on, but Xuanjian could feel that the air around them was heated by the destruction ray. Go, Master Ball! Without waiting for the result, the crew cut confidently threw 2 Master Balls at the 2 big guys. In his opinion, although the 2 guys were powerful, they had no spare power to resist under this joint attack. Moreover, with the effect of the Master Ball, even if there was some spare power, it would not have much impact. As a work representing the pinnacle of modern human technology, the Master Ball has a powerful effect. For most Pokémon, as long as they are hit, they will be locked up without suspense and then captured by the trainer. Although the giant Jengar and the giant Alakazam are much stronger than ordinary Pokémon, they have also suffered huge damage. Except for Xuanjian, everyone thinks that this capture will definitely succeed. But God played a huge joke on everyone. The Master Ball hit the 2 big guys accurately, but there was no reaction. Instead, it bounced to the side like an ordinary ball. What's going on? The crew cut looked at the scene in front of him in surprise. This is unscientific. Could it be that these 2 big guys already have owners? Otherwise, it shouldn't be like this. Shota said. As the heir of Silver Company, one of the main developers of the Master Ball, he is very familiar with the Master Ball that ordinary people rarely see. If the Master Ball could not subdue these 2 guys, then the scene that would appear should be that these 2 big guys were sucked into the ball, and then the Pokeball was broken and destroyed, rather than no reaction at all. There is only one possibility for this scene to appear: these 2 big guys have been subdued. But these 2 big guys have just woken up from the ruins. White said, she saw the 2 big guys waking up from the ruins with her own eyes. Maybe they were already subdued in the super ancient civilization era. Xuanjian said. Before everyone's discussion continued, the consequences of the failure to subdue them began to appear. Maybe the 2 super ancient civilization Pokémons are stupid and rigid, but they are definitely not fools. Xuanjian's trick was able to succeed before, because they were not united, allowing Xuanjian's one-on-one conspiracy to succeed. The recovery team led by the crew cut attacked them at the same time, which made them alert at the same time, stopped fighting internally, and set their sights on the recovery team. Dark Knight Demon Shadow. Strong mental thoughts. The 2 giant super ancient elves had recovered while the capture and recovery team was waiting for them to be captured, and immediately launched an attack on them. The powerful attack immediately swept towards the Pidgeot in the air. Chew. Although the Pidgeots immediately began to dodge, their bodies were still a little stiff after using the destruction death ray. Several Pidgeots were unable to dodge and were hit by the attack. Under the powerful attack, these Pidgeots only had time to let out a shrill scream before they were killed by the powerful attack. Damn it! The crew cut looked at the feathers and blood spilled by the killed Pidgeot and cursed viciously, "Fight back! Fight back quickly!" Hearing the crew cut's order, the team members hurriedly ordered the remaining Pidgeots to use their skills to fight back, but affected by the death of their companions, the Pidgeots were a little panicked and could not exert most of their strength. This is troublesome. Xuanjian dodged the aftermath of an attack inside. Once these 2 big guys stopped fighting and did not restrain each other, the difficulty of the strategy suddenly increased several times. At this time, Xuanjian suddenly felt a wave of life coming from not far away, as if something was waking up. Xuanjian quickly looked back and saw a huge bronze bell emitting light and slowly floating up from the ground. Oh my god, here comes another troublemaker. Although I was alone, I still decided to go out for fun. I'm sorry for forgetting to tell everyone. I will resume updating from today. Chapter 274, Calmness and Harvest. Bronze Bell attracted everyone's attention, but everyone was already busy with their own affairs. The giant Jengar and Alakazam, who had reached a reconciliation, showed their terrifying strength as super ancient Pokémon. The people of the recovery team could not last a round under their capture. The elves they sent out were either eaten by Jengar or turned into strange dolls by Alakazam, and some were directly killed by the two. After a while, the recovery team, which was originally in high spirits, became a defeated army. It's finally here. Everyone, find a place to hide. Xuanjian breathed a sigh of relief as he looked at the increasingly bright light of the bronze bell. The giant Jengar and Alakazam, who were attacked at the same time, finally let go of their old grudges and jointly attacked the humans next to them. With the accumulation of new and old grudges, they were particularly ruthless. Without each other's restraint, Xuanjian was not their opponent. At this time, only the big fatty could deal with them. The bronze bell slowly floated to the vicinity of the giant Jengar and Alakazam. The bell emitted a dazzling light. In the light, a giant Jigglypuff covered with strange patterns appeared in front of everyone. Another super ancient Pokémon? Is this Jigglypuff? White said in surprise. Don't worry about that, hide quickly. Xuanjian said. Although it was the giant Jigglypuff who settled the fight in the original book, this big guy is a member of the super ancient Pokémon after all, and Xuanjian can't guarantee that it won't attack humans. Xuanjian and his group found a place to hide quickly, and then looked at the battlefield. The giant Jengar and Alakazam were chasing the remaining members of the recycling team. The big Jigglypuff fell to the ground, not minding the chaos around him. He grabbed the bronze bell and used it as a microphone, and began to perform on his own. Oh, maybe it has been a long time since he last sang, and the big Jigglypuff tried to sing a syllable first. This was the first sound of Jigglypuff's song. But although big Jigglypuff only uttered one syllable, it was like thunder in everyone's ears, and their eardrums were hurt by the vibration. They didn't feel the pleasure of hearing Jigglypuff's beautiful singing at all. My ears hurt. Xuanjian shouted. Maybe this Jigglypuff is too big, so the sound it makes is also a lot louder. Xuanjian said, maybe the music style of the super ancient civilization is like this. White also guessed. This is the worst Jigglypuff song I have ever heard. No other. Duoga complained. As the owner of Jigglypuff, she is qualified enough to say this. Then there is no way. Come out, Zbat. Xuanjian threw out a Pokeball. He didn't intend to expose it at first, but compared to listening to Big Jigglypuff's thunderous heavy bass singing, he could only expose Zbat's signature skills. At this time, Big Pudding had finished the sound test, took a deep breath, and began to sing formally. Bobble lala bobble lee. Xuanjian hurriedly ordered, X-Bat, quickly cancel out Big Pudding's singing. Upon hearing this, the X-Bat immediately flew over the heads of Xuanjian and his group, emitting waves of sound waves. These sound waves formed a cover around Xuanjian and his group, constantly absorbing the sound waves generated by Big Pudding's singing and allowing them to cancel each other out. For a while, the cover was so quiet that no pin drop could be heard, and it seemed to be two different worlds from the outside of the cover. Pudding's singing has a mysterious power, and as long as you hear it, you will gradually fall asleep, but the most important medium sound for its effect is eliminated, so the effect of the singing naturally cannot be exerted. Under the protection of the X-Bat, Xuanjian and his group finally succeeded in persisting to the end, and Giant Jengar and Alakazam fell asleep without any suspense. When Big Pudding saw that his two main audiences, Giant Jengar and Alakazam, fell asleep after singing a song, he was so angry that he drew graffiti on their faces. Seeing this, Xuanjian couldn't help but sweat. It seemed that Jigglypuff's weird habit had been around for a long time. What should we do now? White asked softly, fearing that she would attract Jigglypuff's attention. She had not forgotten the scene of the giant Jengar and Alakazam slaughtering the recovery team just now. Naturally, she didn't dare to attract Jigglypuff's attention at this time. Xuanjian couldn't make up his mind, and just said, wait and see. Although Jigglypuff's race has never been known for its combat effectiveness, Xuanjian was still very cautious and didn't act rashly. After all, it was also a super ancient Pokémon. After drawing faces for the giant Jengar and Alakazam, due to the size of the giant Jigglypuff, the remaining team members and Pidgeot were ignored. The giant Jigglypuff looked around, then yawned out of boredom, and then threw the bronze bell in his hand high up, turning into a ray of light and returning to it. The figures of the giant Jengar and Alakazam began to blur, and finally turned into a black ball and a golden strange-shaped prop. As the giant Jengar's body disappeared, the people and elves that it had eaten also appeared on the ground. Is everyone okay? Seeing everyone reappear, White didn't think much and ran over immediately. However, with the hypnotic effect of the big Jigglypuff, It would take a while for these people to wake up. Xuanjian walked quickly to the things left by the 3 super ancient civilization elves and studied them. The hypnotic effect of the big Jigglypuff was not lifted until the sun set, and the people and elves hypnotized by it gradually woke up. As for the whereabouts of the 3 super ancient civilization elves, everyone chose to conceal it, so the recovery team, which had suffered heavy losses, had to leave silently. Are those 3 big guys hiding in there? Xuanjian came to Xuanjian, who was still studying the 3 props, and asked curiously. No. Xuanjian picked up the crystal and studied it for a long time, then handed it to Shoto, who was also very interested. Do you think this is a prop similar to Pokeball? Shoto shook his head and said, no, even the most primitive tree fruit Pokeball is hollow, and then extended by space technology. Except for the bronze bell, these 3 things are solid, and there are no traces of space technology. At this time, White also came over, and after hearing Shota's words, he joined the discussion. In that case, my original guess that this thing was a primitive Pokeball was wrong. Well, based on the intuition of an archaeologist, I feel that these things are more like sacrificial ritual vessels. A few new stone tablets have been unearthed over there just now. Do you want to come and take a look together? Of course. Everyone followed White to the side of the stone tablets. These newly unearthed stone tablets were standing next to them, and the staff were recording the contents on them. White pointed at the stone tablet and said, this was dug out with the help of Mr. Xuanjian's onyx. With his onyx's help, our work was much faster. Thank you so much? No. Xuanjian was about to say something happily when he heard White's words, but was interrupted by Xuanjian's ear-pulling skill. White smiled and continued, it's a pity that many places are incomplete. But from the incomplete text on it, I can barely piece together some information. That is, the appearance of the 3 big guys is closely related to these 3 props, and it seems to involve some mysterious sacrificial rituals. Sacrifice. When Xuanjian heard this word, he couldn't help but have some guesses in his mind, but Shoto said it before him, are these props used to summon those elves? Summoning. White was a little confused. Well, Shoto explained, that is to say, the elves of the ancient civilization are actually in another place, summoned through certain rituals, rather than being stored in some distorted space like the elves of modern civilization. I remember reading some information when I was a child, and it seems that the earliest conception of the elf ball was based on some ancient legends. Now it seems that it is very likely related to the ancient civilization, but it is just one step away, and the 2 eventually took different paths. That makes sense. White nodded. At this time, a staff member hurried over. Doctor, we have excavated another stone slab, and this time the stone slab is well preserved. Come and have a look. Okay, take me there. White said immediately, and everyone followed White curiously. There are not many words on this stone slab, but the material of the stone slab is very solid, and it looks much more advanced than the previous incomplete pieces. Logically, the information on it should be more precious. Standing in front of this stone slab with few words, White fell into a daze and did not react for a long time. Finally, Xuanjian couldn't help asking, what's written on it? Hearing Xuanjian's question, White seemed to come back to his senses and read word by word, the fight between Black Mist and Golden Eyes has been settled, but this is just the beginning of a nightmare. A new fight has begun to brew. This time, no one can quell their fight. This is the fundamental mistake on our path. Perhaps only destruction is the final destination. What does this mean? Xuanjian, who has the lowest comprehension ability among the crowd, asked. Black Mist and Golden Eyes represent Jengar and Alakazam respectively. These should be their names in the super ancient civilization. This stone tablet should have been engraved after the fight was settled, and it foresaw the destruction of the super ancient civilization. White explained. The fundamental mistake on the path. Xuanjian muttered to himself, what exactly is that? I can't write any more. If I write more, it will be another new copy. I don't know when the quartz conference will be delayed. Dig a hole first and fill it later. In the future, if nothing unexpected happens, there will be 1 chapter every 2 days. If you want more, please support it. Chapter 275 The Quartz Conference opens. Xuanjian and Xuanjian left the excavation site of the ancient civilization ruins with a lot of doubts, but Xuanjian had a premonition that he had a deep connection with the ancient civilization and he would probably encounter things related to it again in the future. The quartz plateau is located in the center of the Kanto continent and is named after the high-quality quartz it produces. Because quartz is of excellent quality and is an excellent building material, people built magnificent palaces, altars, temples, arenas and other buildings here as early as the ancient kingdom period. After the rise of modern civilization and the collapse of the kingdom system, these quartz buildings were not abandoned, but were used for other purposes. Thanks to the excellent properties of quartz, they still play an important role today. For example, the palace was transformed into the headquarters and office of the Kanto Alliance, the temple was transformed into a museum and research center, and the altar and arena were transformed into a sports field. According to Shota, who has visited this place many times, the venue for the quartz conference is located in an ancient arena that has been modernized. After arriving at the quartz plateau, Xuanjian went to attend the torch relay ceremony excitedly, saying that he wanted to see the flame of Moltres. Xuanjian was not interested in this, after all, he had even seen Moltres clones, so the two teams separated again. So what are we going to do next? Find a place to sleep or have some fun? Shota asked. First go and register, then find a place to stay, and then I will do the final tactical training for the Pokémons. Xuanjian said. Due to the influx of a large number of trainers, the Pokémon Center near the Quartz Conference venue was already full. Guys like Xuanjian who came late could only find a place to stay by themselves. Fortunately, the league also took this situation into consideration. During the Quartz Conference, all participating trainers can stay in any store for free. But even so, it is not easy to find a suitable place to stay. After all, there are also many tourists coming to watch the game, and many hotels are already full. By the way, Duoge, I'll leave the Pokémon state adjustment to you. Xuanjian said to Duoge. Duoge's skills are much better than those who provide elf storage and care services, and the places that can care for elves, including the Elf Center, are now full. Whenever this happens, Xuanjian deeply realizes the benefits of teaming up with breeders. No problem, leave it to me. Duoge nodded. Perhaps because there are still several days before the registration deadline, not many people have registered. Xuanjian quickly completed the registration and received a lot of information about the competition. Holding these materials, Xuanjian said, then let's go next. Suddenly, Xuanjian felt a hand on his shoulder, and he couldn't help but stop talking and turn to look back. Yato. Although the other party was wearing sunglasses, Xuanjian still recognized him immediately. It was Yato whom he hadn't seen for a long time. Why are you here? Of course I came here specifically to cheer you up. Yato took off his sunglasses and said, how about it? Are you surprised? Are you delighted? Xuanjian nodded and said, although I know that your fundamental purpose is to come to me to get experimental materials, I am still very happy that you come to cheer me up in person. Yato curled his lips. You make it sound like I have bad intentions. Forget it, I won't bother with you. By the way, why are you here only now? I've been waiting here for several days. I was delayed on the way by something, but I have collected super precious materials this time. Xuanjian said, shaking his index finger. Is that so? I wonder what the material is. Then Yato remembered that this place was in public and it was not suitable to expose some secret things, so he said, let's go to the place where we live first. Division, line. As a doctor recognized by the Alliance, Xiaobo's main base is located in the Honglian Gym on Honglian Island, but there is also a villa here in the Quartz Plateau. Xuanjian and his party settled here under the leadership of Yato. After settling Duoki and Xiangta, Yato took Xuanjian alone to the outside of the villa area. I didn't expect Xiaobo to have a villa here. Where are we going now? Xuanjian smacked his lips. Because this place is adjacent to a series of famous places such as the Quartz Conference venue, the house is simply sky high. If you have to make an analogy, it is probably not much worse than within the second ring road of Beijing in the previous life. This is a benefit given by the Alliance. It is convenient for Xiaobo to stay here when he comes to participate in some activities. We are going to a nearby Alliance base now. There are many equipment in it. When I came, Xiaobo authorized me to use it, so you can take advantage of the time to have intensive training. Alliance base? Intensive training. Xuanjian shook his head. The training base is a good place, but the Quartz Conference will be held soon. Will intensive training be useful? Of course, Yato said, raising his right hand, turning on the projection device on the watch. projecting the schedule, and then said, from the official start of the competition to the determination of the champion and runner-up, many games are required, which will last about a month. Excluding the time spent on participating in the competition, you have at least half a month of training time. If you use it well, your strength will be greatly improved during this period. If you can even seize the time to develop 1 or 2 targeted killer moves, you can even turn defeat into victory. Xuanjian rubbed his chin, thought for a while, and said, that makes sense. Then what equipment is here? Here, it's on it. Yado handed over a bound volume with a full introduction to this base. Xuanjian took it, but from the moment he turned the first page, his expression changed, and finally turned dark, looking at your duo with an unfriendly face. Why are you looking at me like that? Your duo pretended to look innocent and looked at Xuanjian. You guys are too good at business. Xuanjian roared, what kind of elf training base is this? This is an abandoned military base. Although it was my idea to use military equipment for elf training, your attitude of putting it into use without even modifying it is too perfunctory. Haha, Yado looked embarrassed. There's nothing I can do about it, just make do with it. And you can provide better modification suggestions after you use it yourself, right? Okay, Xuanjian said helplessly, but I want 50% of the shares after this base is built. Impossible. You are getting something for nothing, at most 10%. 40%. That 10% is for your hard work. At most 20%. Once this base is built, it will be very profitable in the future due to its geographical advantage close to the Quartz Conference Center. 20% is not a small amount. At least 30%. I still need to give my opinions after the base is built. Since the prospects are so good, 30% is already very low. Deal. Yado high-fived Xuanjian. This was also the highest price Xiaobo offered. The two sides happily reached an agreement. Xuanjian did not hesitate, and reopened the instruction manual. This place can be transformed like this, used to train elves. The next chapter officially starts the Quartz Conference. In addition, we would like to thank the Bug Friends in September, Min's Holaochuan, Where's Liu Bei, Kidian Reading iOS, 30,661, TT Luo, Big Snake, Nix A, and Cheyenne Mo 334 for their rewards. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.